Welcome to the Ultimate Crusader Kings 3 Achievement Guide. This is a video giving you a guided walk through all of the achievements in the game up to the Northern Lords expansion. This does not include Royal Court if you're watching this in February. This guide is designed for intermediate to advanced level players and comes at the techniques with a speedrun mindset, meaning that speed is valued over ease or over convenience. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into the runs, boys. This video is composed of a mix of recorded sets just for this video and clips taken from my stream wherein I performed the first ever Crusader Kings 3 All Achievements single segment speedrun. You can find that on my Twitch in the description down below. Let's get started. The first run is to get the most RNG dependent achievement in the game, the Things Love Does For Us. This achievement requires your lover to save you from an assassination. The chance of this happening is ridiculously low, but here's a consistent strategy to get it. The estimated time is anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes, depending on your RNG. Without further ado, boys, let's just get right into it. This run revolves around the Byzantine Emperor, and the fact that he can be easily hated, just as well as he can be loved. We're going to go ahead and make a custom character using a few distinct traits that I'll outline in just a second here. Don't forget to go Iron Man mode, by the way. Go ahead and make a custom Byzantine Emperor and choose a religion that's not Christian. This is to make people dislike you. You're also going to want to choose a non-Greek culture for the same reason. Next, we'll be picking the stuff on the right-hand side of the screen. Go ahead and set your age to about 50 for some perk points, and the only thing that matters here is your education. As long as it's an intrigue education, you're good. The rest of it doesn't matter. Final decision that has any importance in this strategy is that you take one son. Specifically, one. Once you're in the game, go ahead and pick your focus. We're going to be choosing Seduction in the Intrigue tree, and you should already have quite a few perks from being old. Go ahead and take everything in the Seducer tree, and the most important one here is Mortal Adoration, which is going to increase your chance of being saved by your lover. Next, go into your court and find any woman. Click Seduce, and if it's high enough chance, just go for it. And now we just wait. Once the plot completes, you'll be able to seduce your seductee? Question mark? Not sure about that one. But go ahead and make her your lover. And now we move on to the next step. The next step involves attempting to imprison one of your vassals. You might be asking why. The reason is because we are looking to get into a civil war, as shown here. Once you're in the civil war, you're going to head over to the war and go to surrender. And you notice part of the terms of surrender are being deposed. When you're deposed, you play as your kid, as if you had a succession. Very simple. Now we're playing as our son. Go ahead and click on yourself, and get ready to make a plot against your own father. We're going to commit some
patricide.
Use the money you've accumulated from your riches as the Roman Emperor and invite everyone that you can to get the most chance to kill as possible and the fastest speed. Hopefully you get enough people. If not, well, just try it anyway, you never know if it'll work. Once everyone's been invited and you've got the maximum chance, go ahead and do the same thing we just did again. Imprison a vassal, fail, get into a civil war, and then surrender. Once you've been deposed for the second time, you'll be playing as your father once again, who was previously deposed himself. Now, you just gotta wait, because someone's trying to kill you, and you've got a lover, and we just cross our fingers and hope. I was lucky enough to get this in 5 attempts, but for some of you it may take longer, and for some of you it may be even shorter. Regardless, here's what the event looks like. You can tell you got the event because your character will have his face in his hands, and your lover will be dead. Also, the name of the event will say Foiled by Love, so that's how you know you're good. Hopefully you get this achievement pretty quickly. Don't forget to wait a day or two for the achievement to actually pop up, and then you should be done. That is what love does for us. The only pure RNG achievement in Crusader Kings 3. So now how about an achievement that features a little bit of RNG, but a whole lot less. This run is all about getting 2 achievements. One of them is Faster Than the Fox, the other one is Going Places. Faster Than the Fox requires you to conquer all of Sicily as a Norse tribal, although contrary to what the achievement says, you do not have to be tribal, you only have to be Norse and Asatru. Going Places is even easier on the other hand. It requires you to play as Hastin and to create a kingdom title. We'll be doing both in the same playthrough. The estimate for this run is about 20 to 30 minutes, and it's not very RNG dependent, thank goodness. Let's get into the run, boys. The achievement requires us to start as Jarl Haston. We're actually not going to be doing much character creation for ourselves, but there is a strategy that we use in this run that involves creating a nice shield maiden wife for ourselves down in Sicily. We're going to be turning the Sheikh of Agrigento into a female Norse Asatru character that we can marry and use as a shield maiden in our later conquests of Sicily. Making the characters pretty straightforward. Go ahead and make her Norse Asatru, and then make her North Germanic Norse to give the best chance of her marrying you. It should be pretty much guaranteed. Give her a name, and then put her age up to about 50 years. Now we're just going to give her a whole bunch of martial-based traits and stats. I chose not to give her any personality traits because ultimately the points are better spent on other things. You've got a lot of freedom at this point, you can kind of pick whatever you want, but I usually prioritize Siege Leader, Strategist, and Legendary Blade Master. This is because prowess is directly linked to how likely you are to capture someone in combat, so if you want to play the luck game, try to get that high prowess stat. Strategist gives you more kills in battle, which gives you more war score, and Siege Leader makes sieges faster, and sieges in CK3 are always what slow down your runs. In the end, the character that I made looks like this. But you feel free to make your own character and do whatever you feel like. There's not really a perfect, optimal way to do this. With your character made, don't forget to switch to Iron Man mode, and then we're going to just go ahead and switch characters over to Haston and do nothing. You should still be in an Iron Man compatible game, and you will only have made one custom character, therefore not breaking any of the speedrun rules. As with any campaign, the first step is to pick your lifestyle and your perks. You might start with the right set, but if not, feel free to reset, as you can see me doing here. The only one that you desperately need is Sappers, because this will make your sieges much faster, and then other than that, just go ahead and fill out the Gallant tree and the Strategist tree to your desires. Before doing anything though, go ahead and marry your wife. You're going to have to divorce your current one and then remarry to the Countess of Agrigento, or Sheikha as she'll be called because of her liege. Along with your new shield maiden wife, go ahead and get your son married as well for a strong alliance. I recommend Sialand, Yiland, Jorvik, or Kiev. I chose Sialand in this run. The first war is going to be against Sardinia, specifically Cagliari in the south. Mostly just because we want to use them as a base to get access to Sicily. Quick note as well, be sure to use the Varangian Adventure CB so that we can get a lot of money. Whenever you use a Varangian Adventure CB, you get a bunch of money from the adventure, you could say. This war is basically just a pushover, nothing to worry about at all here. If you're as lucky as I am, you'll capture the Duke of Cagliari, and then that'll be the end of it. If you're not, just siege down his capital, and you'll win quickly. This next war is the first major war, you could say. We're going to be declaring war for the Duchy of Sicily against the Aghlabids. Keep in mind that this duchy is also being contested by the Byzantines, who are going to be hostile towards you during this war. We do not want to fight any Byzantine armies if we can avoid it, therefore, go ahead and head into Tunisia instead of heading into Sicily right away so that you can do some sieges down there, and then once the Byzantines have finished their war, you can come in and get the sieges after theirs are gone. You see the Byzantines have finished their war, so now we head into Sicily here, and we go ahead and just siege it down until we win. It should be pretty easy, and go ahead and fight the Sicilian army if you feel like it, but ultimately you don't really have to, it's up to you. Once you've won the war against the Aghlabids, you'll have control over your wife's destiny, and her destiny is going to be to fight your enemies on the battlefield. Go ahead and declare just a bunch of wars against all kinds of minor southern Italian states such as the Sardinian Emirate, Salerno, and Napoli. Although Haston is a better combat commander than his wife, you can go ahead and split your army in half and then assign your wife to one of the armies and yourself to the other, and that way when you are doing sieges you'll get the benefits of the siege commander, but when you're in battles Haston will take over and do a lot of damage as he should. After your first set of 3 wars, your next target is going to be Benevento and then whoever's left who's minor. So in my case the Sardinian Emirate passed away and this caused his realm to split up into Cosenza and Camarda, along with the already existing Sardinian Emirate, so I'm just going to go ahead and wipe up what's left. The next target for us will be Italy proper. We're going to need to take 2 provinces from Italy, which will be Capua and Bari. Italy might seem a little bit scary because they have a lot of troops and they might have a Carling ally like Lotharingia in my case. But don't be intimidated by them because ultimately Haston is an extremely good commander and you have extremely overpowered units and you will be completely fine as long as you don't fight a 10-to-1 battle or something. This war can take you a long time because Italy is very large and the sieges won't be worth very much, but win battles where you can, siege the war goal, wait for the ticking war score, get a couple extra sieges here and there if you want to, and you should be done in no time. Once you defeated the Italians, we're going to be coming back for Bari later, but for now, go ahead and get ready to attack the Byzantines, who are going to be probably your toughest enemy in this run. When we declare war on the Byzantines, be sure to use Invasion of Kingdom and pick Sicily. This is just because we don't want to fight them twice, and even though it's a bit of a waste of the CB, for the purpose of this speedrun, we're not going to be using it for anything else, so go ahead and use it to take all of Sicily off the Byzantines. The Byzantines aren't quite as weak as the Italians, but there's one thing you can do to make the war quite trivial, and that is catch their army as they land. The recently embarked penalty is a -30 combat advantage, which is an effective change with above 30 martial points. So once you see Byzantines landing, try to get there as fast as you can while they're still recently embarked, and you should be able to completely slaughter their armies. In my case here, I was exceedingly lucky and managed to actually capture the Emperor, but if you're having trouble, feel free to hire some mercenaries. I did in this run, and they can trivialize it. It'll just slow you down a little bit later when you have to make the Kingdom of Sicily. We've only got a couple more wars to go to finish this off, so go ahead and truce break both Italy and what was left of Benevento, and you can go ahead and take the last provinces you need to rule all of Sicily. Same deal here with Italy as there was last time. They look big, they're really not, and again, you might even have mercenaries left over from your Byzantine war, but if you didn't hire any mercenaries for the Byzantines, you can hire them now. Don't worry about it, you have lots of money. Once you've defeated the Italians and what's left of the Beneventoans in Apulia, then go ahead and end your wars, and you should receive the achievement Faster Than the Fox. This run, however, is not quite over, as we still have to become a kingdom tier character as Haston, but this is the easy part, don't worry. All we need to become a king is a lot of money. If you didn't use any mercenaries for your wars, then you can probably do this right away and be done right now. But if you did use mercenaries, then we're just going to go raiding. We are Norse after all. I recommend the Pope, he's a good option, Venice, anybody's good really. It takes like 5 seconds, and then once you have the money, you're done. You're good to go. You're going to need 2 duchies in order to form a kingdom, so go ahead and make Sicily or Calabria or anything you want. You already have Sardinia from your adventure before, and then you can make the Kingdom of Sicily, and you're done. There's the Going Places achievement, and you've already gotten the Faster Than the Fox achievement, giving you 2 more achievements on your adventure to get all achievements in CK3. Let's see what's next. This next achievement is probably the most soul-crushing of all of them. It is Mother of Us All, which requires you to, as Daurama Daura, conquer all of Africa and convert it to your reformed pagan religion. The estimate for this run is about 9 to 11 hours. Strap in, boys, because we've got a very long run ahead of us. Before we get started on this one as well, I just want to say that I highly recommend doing this run in a series of segments, not all in one sitting, because as you do this run, you will begin to hate your life, and you might end up taking several hours longer to do it than you might expect. So just keep that in mind. Character creation for this run is nice and easy. We don't make a character. And that's about it. Alright, there's your guide to Mother of Us All. Just don't make a character and you're done. Wait, you mean I actually have to make a guide for this? Are you kidding me? You have any idea how long this takes? Your first step, as with any run, is of course to pick your focus. I usually go with a military focus, even though Daurama herself is actually a diplomacy-focused character. Usually Martial will help you out more in the early game, and we can switch to diplomacy later when we're looking to get more prestige. When you get the event about your succession, go ahead and pick the third option so that you can have your sister as your heir, and then we'll figure out our succession later, as we will hopefully have children. By the way, pro tip, give a gift to your rival so that she will stop being your rival, and then she won't murder you. That's just to prevent some RNG. You don't have to do it, but it makes the run safer. One thing we'll be using to our advantage in the early game is that Daurama is a relatively well-liked character. She's a very high diplomacy, and she has a couple diplomacy perks to start the game, which means that you don't have to worry about your vassals too much. This means we're going to be declaring a lot of wars and accruing a pretty insane offensive war penalty, but not really caring about it because we're just going to be busy conquering everyone. Keep in mind as well that your husband is actually a fairly strong local power that you can definitely use to win some wars. That being said, don't overuse him because the prestige cost is kind of expensive. Once you've conquered a nice swath of land, you might be tempted to make the Kingdom of House of Land, which is a reasonable temptation, but we're actually not going to do that because we can become a king, or queen in this case, for free. Usually, at least one of Yorubaland or Kanembornu will form. If they do, pick one of them and subjugate them. Go with whichever one is bigger. That's why we're saving our subjugation. In my run, I went with Yorubaland. One precaution to take when it comes to Yorubaland is that their culture, Yoruba, has access to some pretty nasty archer units that will mess you up in certain terrains. So before you go and fight them, just make sure you have some cavalry, or make sure at least that you have a large numerical advantage and that you take battles in dry lands or plains or non-jungle areas. That way you can avoid some of the huge damage they'll do to you. You should be able to win pretty easily if you've assembled a lot of men and if you have your husband on your side still. At this point, managing succession is probably on your mind, and basically the general rule is disinherit everyone that isn't the kid that you want to have, and if you can't disinherit, then imprison plus execute. You might think it's going to suck to do that, but for real, it's worth it. You're going to be pretty much the strongest person in your whole kingdom for most of your run. You're only going to get the occasional rebellion. So having vassals that hate you only means they might murder you, but if you're dealing with succession, you're expecting to die anyway, so it's not really a problem. Speaking of vassals that want to murder you, you're going to have a lot of vassals who are not your culture and not your religion. And there's basically a tier of actions that you want to take. Firstly, if you can revoke their territory and grant it to people of your culture and your religion, do that first. If that's not possible for whatever reason, then you're going to want to unify all those of that wrong culture, wrong religion under one big vassal who you can control better. Ultimately, the first option is preferable, but the second option is good to do if you have no choice. We're going to eventually be converting all those vassals to our new religion anyway, and culture won't matter that much. I actually ended up resetting the run that you see on screen after Daurama died a little bit early, but it's fine because ultimately I followed the exact same principles and ended up in a similar position, except in this true playthrough, I ended up subjugating Kano instead of Yorubaland, but it's the same principles, you'll see. If Daurama does die early, feel free to reset. She's very valuable and it can be a little bit frustrating if she dies, and it is worth it to keep her alive as long as possible, so I'd recommend resetting if she dies before you're able to form, I'd say maybe 3 or 4 kingdoms. Up to you though, of course. In this run here, as my second character, I decided to subjugate Ghana. Ghana tends to be a large kingdom in the west of Africa that is a good target for subjugation. The only problem is that they are composed of vassals of different cultures, of different religions that are going to really dislike you. So only take them over if you're certain that you can handle the vassal management. Otherwise, conquer them with counties and duchies slowly if you would feel more comfortable doing that. The next more or less turning point of this run is once you form the Empire of Kanem-Bornu. This is where you're going to start snowballing and where vassal management is going to become the main source of headaches as opposed to actually winning wars. As you continue to expand in all directions, focusing in on heading towards North Africa before the Muslims can get too strong, you're going to have to manage your vassals, and this is where there's going to be a lot of headaches coming in for you. When it comes to these large, blobbing campaigns, I have a single philosophy when it comes to vassals, and that is that I love to use king vassals as a way to keep everything in order, although it weakens you. Generally speaking, you will never get a large number of levies or a large number of taxes off of a king in comparison to many dukes, but as a speedrunner and someone trying to avoid having a literal mental breakdown on stream, I much prefer to have the strong kings who will be married into my family and therefore allied to me and unable to rebel, who will never cause problems for me, but they'll provide fewer troops. To me, it's worth it, but it's up to you. If you're doing multiple segments and you can handle the headache because you can take breaks between days and all that kind of thing, it may be preferable to use Duke vassals to keep your strength up. Entirely up to you. I will say one genuine weakness of the kingdom system is that you're going to have a lot of sub-vassals who are of the wrong religion, and that's okay for now, but later it'll be a problem. One thing that's actually quite important is to take some time to be at peace. You want to be at war as much as you can so that you can conquer things faster and get a faster pace. But ultimately, if you're sacrificing your realm, you're going to regret it. You can be very easy to spiral into mass rebellion from huge popular unrest after wars. And the thing is, if your troops are stuck in Northwest Africa and you've got a rebellion in Southeast Africa, getting there is going to take forever and it'll cost you more time than as if you had been at peace. So if you see a rebellion coming, try to end your wars and then stay at peace for a bit, let the rebellion rise, kill it, and then go for your next conquest. One of the lesser spoken of benefits of being at peace as well is that you can rest your brain for a little while. This run is extremely tiring, especially if you're doing it in one sitting, so taking some time to just kind of relax, take a breather, will be extremely valuable in actually maintaining your efficiency. So if you feel like you're getting tired of all the wars, take a step back, relax, build up some money, build up some prestige, check on your vassals, more passive things, and then come back to the wars when you're ready. These moments of peace are also good opportunities to focus on building up some piety, because we are going to have to reform the religion, and that's going to cost a lot of piety. Once it's time to reform, there's one thing you really have to make sure of, and that is that all of your vassals will convert with you. This is going to save you a lot of headaches later with dealing with the wrong religion vassals. Once you've ensured that every vassal is going to be converting with you, the next thing we're going to look at is our tenets. You're going to want to pick warmonger, mendicant preachers, and sanctioned false conversions. This is so that you can conquer things better, you can convert faster, and if anyone does try to convert your stuff, it might not work. You're also going to want to take the fundamentalist doctrine, and that's about it really. You can meme it up and go with unrestricted marriage, but that's up to you. The moment you reform the religion, it's time to start converting stuff. Get your court chaplain and just throw them in every province that you see that needs to be converted, and as you're doing it, also check that the county level vassal in that area is also your religion. Try to demand conversion of everyone that isn't your religion, even the sub-vassals. This way they'll start converting it on their own as well. This is where if you chose to not do king vassals, you'll have an easier time because you'll already have converted most of your vassals. But regardless, you can take the time now to start getting all of your sub-vassals to convert. Important note, and a slight technicality, the achievement requires you to convert everything to your religion, not to your faith. So anything that stayed old Bori, you can let that be. You don't have to convert it. I chose to convert my domain provinces to Bori, so just because I wanted to avoid rebellions and get more taxes and everything. But in terms of your vassals, you don't actually have to convert them to New Bori. Now we get to the part of the run where there's basically nothing more I can tell you besides finish doing the conquests. You understand the principles at this point of how to maintain your succession, you manage your vassals, and you just convert things. It's time to conquer the rest of Africa. This is going to take a long time because Africa is big, disunited, and very, very, very difficult to travel across. So unfortunately, this is going to be a part of the time of the run where you just waste your life. It sucks. It is what it is, though. You can have your own coping mechanisms. For me, it was good music, a cool community to chat with on my stream, and I think I had dinner at one point during this run. Honestly, it all kind of just blurred through my head. This run is like 8 hours long when I did it, so I don't even know what happened anymore. The most I can offer here to help keep you sane is try to conquer in different directions to give yourself some diversity of things to look at. I made the mistake of choosing to conquer each region one at a time. So what I mean by that is that when it came to Somalia and the entire Horn of Africa, I did it all in one go instead of going back and forth between east and west. And this meant that I was looking at the same map for literal hours. And that can be very mind-breaking. You might think that I'm memeing, but to be honest with you, it's when you start getting bored and you start getting lazy that you will lose this run. I have lost this run like 6 to 7 hours in because I'm so tired and so done with it that I stop paying attention, and then I lose track of my vassals, I lose track of my rebellions, and it all falls apart. Especially succession. If you have a bad succession, you will ruin your game. Keep that in mind when I tell you that you gotta manage your mentality as you play. When it comes to declaring wars, I recommend declaring a large set of wars in one region where you can have your army attack in one large group, because that way you don't have to do as micromanagement. Even though micromanagement is more optimal and attacking across many different sectors of Africa is optimal, in a literal sense, it's not optimal for your mental space. And I'm going to keep emphasizing this mental space thing because I've lost too many runs to being overambitious and trying to be speedier than I can handle. And trust me when I say that nothing hurts more than losing a 7-hour run to just being burnt out. Once you're reaching the end, just don't lose your cool, relax, keep converting, pay attention to your vassals, and you should be okay. Here you see I'm at the very end and I'm almost ready to call it a day, but here it is, I'm randomly killing rebels, and then bam, the achievement comes in. And once it's gone, the amount of relief that will wash over you is unparalleled. Oh, we got Mother of Us All, there we go. Okay, before we finish this up though, I'm gonna grab Octogenarians for Legacy Last Ages. We finished that, there you go. Alright. Cool, well, I'm gonna go take a piss. We'll be back in just 1 second. Won't be gone very long. We're a solid quarter of the way through, boys. Solid quarter of the way through. Hoggers. It might not have sounded like it, based on how tired I sounded in the clip here, but let me tell you, I was extremely relieved that I was done, and you will be too once you're done as well. Hope this guide was informative, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you have just as much luck as I did in your Daura adventure. Alright, let's go to the next one, boys. The next achievement is Frankokratia, which requires you to, as a French Catholic, hold the Kingdom of Thessalonica without being vassalized to Byzantium. You only need the de jure land of the Kingdom of Thessalonica, not the actual kingdom itself, by the way, so it's a little bit easier than it might look. The estimate for this run is anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, depending on your luck. By the way, this run's going to be another Haston run, so get excited for that. Given this is a Haston run, our custom character is not going to be who we play as. Instead, we're going to be making a custom character for the Empress of the Byzantine Empire. Essentially, we're going to be making a very garbage tier character that we can easily defeat in a single war. That's why we're making the Byzantine Empress the custom character. What you do with her is pretty much irrelevant, just make sure she has 0 in all stats, and you're good. This is the character that I went with in the end, but you can do whatever you want. Once you've turned Iron Man mode on, go ahead and select Haston as your character, and we'll do the simple setup we always do with him. If you don't have the strategist line of perks, go ahead and refund your perks and grab that, and then we'll move on from there. Before anything, go ahead and get your son married off so you can get yourself a nice alliance. I recommend any of the strong Norse people, just sort by alliance strength, pick the top one. Our opening move in terms of wars is to declare war on Cagliari, like usual, but do not use a Varangian adventure this time, use a conquest of duchy. With the war won, you now have access to the rest of the Mediterranean. Attacking the Byzantine Empire might seem like a foolhardy move, but don't worry, you can handle it, especially if you got yourself a good ally in the beginning. Go ahead and declare an invasion of Kingdom CB using Thessalonica as your target, and then call in your ally to come help you. Go ahead and start sieging some random lands in Thrace and the Greek coast, and wait until the Byzantines come to confront you. With luck, they will have dragged their troops away from Sicily, which is their other war, and they'll come back to Greece with no supplies, and you can just ravage them as they arrive on the coast. With the Byzantine army defeated once, don't let them recover, just go ahead and chase them down until they have effectively no more troops, or until you get maximum battle war score, and then just keep sieging things, and hopefully with your allies' help, you'll be able to siege things pretty quickly. With enough sieges complete, you'll be done the war, and now it's on to the final step. This section is nice and short. Basically, survey your lands, check that you have the whole de jure kingdom, and then go to your decisions and have the realm embrace local culture. Assuming you didn't Varangian adventure, your capital will still be in Montague, which is a French Catholic province. Thus, Haston will become French and Catholic, and you will have the achievement. That one was nice and quick, so let's go on to the next one. Perhaps one of the easiest achievements in this entire list now, we have Almost There. This achievement requires you to, as Almost Arpad, form Hungary and convert to Christianity. This achievement is special in that it is extremely easy, although it can go wrong, but even if it goes wrong, you can still get it, it will just slow you down. The estimate for this run is anywhere from about 2 minutes to 5 minutes. It's extremely fast. Begin the game as Almost Arpad of the Magyar Confederation, and then you'll start the game off in a war against the Kingdom of Bulgaria. The war is extremely one-sided in your favor. The only thing that can go wrong is if the Byzantines join the war against you, but as you can see in this demonstration run here, they did that and I still won, so you can do it too. When it comes to perks, I recommend the left-hand side of the tree, so the strategist tree, but it won't really matter that much, to be honest, so don't worry about it. You happen to actually have siege equipment as Almost Arpad in this start, so you're pretty much good on all fronts. If the Byzantines are in your war, then they usually will take boats and land in your eastern provinces. If that happens, then try to get there quickly and attack them while they have the disembarked bonus, and you'll be able to slaughter them pretty well. Honestly, the Byzantines are kind of just free war score in this war, even though they look intimidating. They're pretty much just free war score. Go ahead and chase the Bulgarians around, do some sieges. The war is pretty hands-off. Once you've got 100% war score, enforce your demands, and then become any kind of Christian. I chose Orthodox in this case, but it doesn't matter. Any of them count. Once you convert and allow a day to pass, you should have the achievement. Congratulations. A quick note about this achievement, because I highly suspect that it wasn't meant to be this easy, but I think what Paradox was trying to do was actually have Almost Arpad be required to take the Promote Christian Settlements decision. Now that would have been an actual challenge for an achievement. Oh well, let's move on to the next one. The next achievement is King of all the Isles, which requires you to, as a North Germanic Asatru, control all islands in the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea, whilst keeping your realm size below 80. This achievement is time-consuming, but ultimately not very difficult. This is also going to be another Haston run, so get ready to play as Haston once again. And the estimate is anywhere from 50 minutes to an hour and a half. This run is a little bit difficult right in the beginning, and then once you accomplish the first couple wars, the rest of it just kind of falls into place. You'll see. As usual, we'll be making a trash custom character for the Byzantine Empire because they're going to be the most difficult war that we'll be starting off with. So go ahead and make yourself a really bad emperor for the Empire. Doesn't really matter, imbecile, hideous, whatever you want, as long as their stats are extremely low, you're good. Here's the character I ended up making. Don't forget as well to go ahead and switch your game to Iron Man mode. Classic thing to forget. And then we'll get started as Haston. As with many Haston runs, you're going to go and take a look at your perks. If you have the left side of the tree, go ahead and keep your perks, but if you don't, swap over to the left hand side. We want that siege speed from sappers. Put the rest of your perks into the right hand tree, and we'll begin our conquests into the Mediterranean Sea. Go ahead and declare a Varangian adventure against Cagliari, as we usually do. Feel free to check if you can get a good alliance with your son, but if you can't, then don't worry about it. We don't really need an alliance. It's just nice if you can get it. With the war against Cagliari done, it's as simple as now beginning our war against the Byzantines. We're going to be using an invasion of kingdom on the Thessalonica kingdom, just like in Frankokratia, except we're going to be sure to occupy a couple of key provinces for this achievement. Remember that with invasion of kingdom, anything that you occupy you also take. So we're going to be occupying the section of Sicily the Byzantines have, their section of Cyprus, and then 2 provinces in the kingdom of Epirus that are going to be vital. The 2 provinces that can be hard to miss in the kingdom of Epirus are Cephalonia and Buthrodum, which are on the west coast of the kingdom of Epirus. You'll see me occupy them here in the footage. You may have also seen me get those mercenaries. Definitely feel free to grab mercenaries if you feel like you can't beat the Byzantines by yourself. It's more than safe and you'll have lots of money from your ranked adventure. Here you see me grabbing Cephalonia as well. Feel free to note down its location. You can also find a list of all the islands that you need on the wiki. So go ahead and head over to the Crusader Kings 3 wiki, achievement list, and it'll give you a comprehensive list in case you can't find everything. Once you've won the war, don't end it right away. Go ahead and take a look around and see you got everything. You're going to need Buthrodum, Cephalonia, Syracusa, and Nicosia. The rest of the Mediterranean islands owned by the Byzantines are in the Kingdom of Thessalonica, which we're taking by default from winning the war. With that, you've got pretty much the hardest part of the run out of the way. The rest of it is going to be conquering tiny little islanders, and most importantly, keeping Haston alive. This run kind of dies if he dies. Hand out all of the land that you gained from this war, except for the 3 provinces in Thrace, because we're going to keep those for our domain, and be sure to give the land to Norse Asatru characters. This is because we want them to like us. Even though we're going to be very powerful, we don't want to get assassinated, so we want vassals who are actually happy with us. At this point, funnily enough, we're actually going to spend a couple years at peace waiting for the Greek independence faction to fire. There's going to be a group of your vassals that you took from the Byzantines who are going to really dislike you because they're Greek and Orthodox, and we kind of just want to let them declare their war right now since we have a good opportunity. Move your capital to Constantinople so that it's safe there, no one will ever be able to siege that, and then wait for the faction to rise up. Be sure to begin raising control in Constantinople as well because we actually are going to need the income that it's going to provide us. It's going to be vital, in fact. Spend a couple years building up control, saving money, and just making your vassals like you a little bit, and once the Orthodox Greek rebels are willing to rise up, go ahead and tell them to frick off and begin the war. This war will be about equal in terms of numbers. You'll probably have a little bit more, but then because of your commander and the fact that your troops are all going to be together and theirs are going to be separate, you're going to win this war like a piece of cake. Nothing to worry about here. Once you win the war, all of those vassals are going to be considered traitors and they'll be in your prison. It's time to revoke all their titles and redistribute them to proper Norse Asatru vassals. This will cause you some tyranny if you have multi-count vassals, but don't worry about that because ultimately we're going to be going for a very high dread playthrough here, so you don't have to worry too much about your tyranny count. Once you've finished redistributing your titles, it's time to enact that high dread playthrough. Go ahead and check your prisoner list and just see if there's anybody that you missed that you want to revoke land from. If not, you're just going to hit that mass execute button. We're basically going to be doing that at the end of every war, keeping our dread nice and at 100 for the whole run. Once you finish looking inward, it's time to look outward. There's no one in the Mediterranean that can really withstand your forces besides the Abbasids for now, so we're going to come back to them. In my run, I started off with the Aghlabids and I took the Duchy of Sicily, but there's not really an importance to the order here. Basically, you just gotta take every island that you see. That includes the Baleares, the rest of Sardinia, Corsica if it looks like a good opportunity. Italy can be kind of strong, so check their power. If they're too strong, we can come back for them. Quick warning here as well, when you go for Venice, don't take just Venezia, you have to also take Veneto, which is the mainland part of Venice. You have to take the whole duchy. I'm not sure why, because it's clearly the mainland, but it does count for the achievement, so be sure to declare a war for the Duchy of Venice, not just for the county. Don't forget about Crete, by the way, which is that small island made up of 2 counties in the southern Aegean Sea. I forgot about it, but that's okay, you can always come back for it. Just don't forget it in your run. We're going to have to get access to the North Sea for this achievement, obviously, because that's part of the Atlantic Ocean. So go ahead and declare war on someone that you can easily handle that's going to give you access to the British Isles. I chose Brittany in this case, but if you see a better opportunity or someone weaker, then go ahead and use that instead. Your priority target in the British Isles is going to be the Isle of Man. There's basically 2 options you have here. If Ivar is still alive, then you assassinate him or wait till he dies. If he's not, then declare the war. We're taking the Isle of Man because we intend to take the decision that everyone knows about, establish the Kingdom of the Man in the Isles. And that's because that's going to give us a 7,500 man permanent stack that we can use to just slaughter everyone left in the game that we need to kill. The war against Ivar or his children can be a little bit difficult if they're still allied to Halfdan over in Jorvik. But even if they are, you can still beat them. It might be a bit of a close battle, but again, feel free to use mercenaries, just like against the Byzantines, and if you happen to grab an ally earlier in the run, then go ahead and call them in as well. With the Isle of Man taken, you now hold what might be the most important province in the whole run. In order to found the Kingdom of Man in the Isles, we're going to have to become a living legend, which is the max level of fame. Considering your recent exploits, you should already be pretty close, but go ahead and put up some runestones, host some feasts, call some hunts, go raiding, etc. until you are a level 5 fame character. It's at this point as well I should emphasize that actually managing your vassals is pretty important. It really sucks to lose a half-hour run to getting assassinated. So go ahead and make sure you have a spellmaster that actually likes you. And also check on your vassals here and there, see who's unhappy, see what you can do about that, and most importantly, keep your dread at 100, so that even if your vassals are upset, they won't kill you. But do both. Keep them happy and keep them scared to make sure you don't get killed. Last barrier against death we have is of course the medicine focus. You don't want to die of natural causes either, and Haston is of course famously healthy in CK3, but nonetheless, go to the medicine focus and start taking the perks on the left hand side of the tree so that you can live to be hopefully over 90. That's about how long you're going to have to live for this to work. Once you've assembled the appropriate amount of fame to become the new king of Man in the Isles, go ahead and click the button, and now the Europeans will feel the wrath of the Vikings. At least the ones that have islands anyway. There are a couple of notable islands that I should list out here that you could miss if you're not paying attention, and those are Anglesey, also called Inismund if it's ruled by a Welsh ruler, that's in Gwynedd. There's the Isle of Wight, which is that island just south of Wessex, and then there's Iceland. Funnily enough, you'd think it's obvious, but in my first playthrough of this run, I actually completely forgot about Iceland. The other set of islands that you probably wouldn't even realize are islands until you realize what their name is, it's the Isles, obviously, the Duchy of the Isles, or Sudreyar, as it'll be called if a Norse character rules it. You're going to need the entire duchy, even though that includes Argyll, which is kind of a mainland province, but it's got islands in it, you know, it's kind of weird, but you need the whole duchy. Keep that in mind. Also, just to assuage some of your worries, you did not need Ireland or the British Isles. As weird as it might seem, the massive island that we call Britain, and the other slightly smaller island that we call Ireland, neither of them are islands in this game apparently, so you're good. Last but not least, in the North Sea, don't forget about the Faroes, Shetland, and Orkney. They form the Duchy of the Northern Isles. You need all three of those. They're really easy though, don't worry. Once you've got Iceland and everything else, you're all done with the North Sea. That's it. It's on to the next sea. Kick off our invasion of the Baltic. Go ahead and declare war on Denmark for the Duchy of Sealand. You need all three provinces in there. We're also going to need Bornholm, but we'll have to come back for that in a different war because we're going to have a truce, and we're not quite ready to truce break yet. So go for Sealand first, we'll get Bornholm later. In my run, I also declared war on Gotland at the same time because I was trying to be fast, but you don't ultimately have to do that. Once you've secured Sealand and Gotland, we're going to basically wipe up the rest of the islands in the Baltic. There's quite a few actually. There's Ossel, which is owned by the Livonians. There's that tiny little strip of island right next to Sweden called Öland, which is weird that it's its own province, but it's there. Then there's that one really strangely named province in the middle of the Baltic owned by Sweden. I'm not sure why this is the case, but it's called Avanima, which is its Finnish name when it's ruled by a Swedish character. And I don't know why that's the case, but it is what it is. Sweden, much like Denmark, owns 2 islands within the region of the Baltic Sea, so we're going to have to fight him in 2 wars. And again, we can't truce break yet because we're trying to keep our prestige high, so don't truce break him, just wait till the truce is up and declare the war again. At this point in the run, you're basically going to just be mopping up what's left. So in my case here, I had left white until later, so I'm attacking white. But oh no, I'm getting a rebellion from my Greek Orthodox subjects. That's okay, just tell them no, and you can put them down. They might look scary because they have like 7,000, 8,000 units, you know, they have a lot of men. But remember that whenever a rebellion comes up from a popular source, so it's from the people, not from lords, they're only going to have levies, they're not going to have any men-at-arms. So even if you have half their troops, you can probably slaughter them with your superior leadership and your superior troops. At this point, it's pretty much time to wrap up. We're going to go back and deal with any islands that we left in those regions. So for example, I'm coming back to Cyprus here to attack the Abbasids, who at this point are weaker, and also I'm stronger, so it'll be an easier war. I'm also coming back for Corsica here because, if I'm being honest, I kind of completely forgot that they existed. But as you can see here, the Duke of Corsica actually broke free from Italy, so the war is going to be even easier than it would have been before. It's totally fine to wait to attack Corsica and Cyprus and these other sort of more powerful enemies, and wait till the end for them, as we're doing here. In my run, the final duchy that I took was the Duchy of Crete, which was a small Muslim emirate the south of the Aegean. I'm not sure why I left them till last. I think I just forgot about their existence. But one note I'm going to tell you is when you're kind of on your last island or two, go to the wiki and just check the list. Just do a checklist and see, okay, do I have this? Do I have that? Do I have this? Do I have that? Totally fine. In terms of realm size, one of the requirements of the achievement is to be below 80 realm size. With this strategy, you will not even come close. By the end of this run, I was at 66 realm size. So you are completely safe. Don't worry about it. Last note for everyone here is don't forget the Canaries. They're not really part of a specific sea. They're neither in the Mediterranean nor in the North Sea, but they're basically a set of 3 islands just kind of off to the west. Don't forget them. Glad that's over. Let's go on to the next run, boys. We're going to move over to a much shorter achievement now. Let's look at Kings to the 7th generation, which requires you to, as Eudes Capet, become the King of France. This run normally can be a little bit of adventure, you could say, but in the speedrun tactic, it's basically a little 5-minute one and done. Luckily enough as well, this run is very consistent and pretty much always takes just 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes or so if you're a little slow. Character creation for this one's a little more complex than we might be used to. We're going to be changing the King of West Francia into a very sinful, Catholic, and foreign woman. We're doing this so that she's more likely to submit to a faction demand, and so that the Pope will give us a claim on the kingdom. Go ahead and give her all of the sinful traits, and then just lower her stats to be 0. Here's the character I decided to create for the Queen of West Francia. Go ahead and set the game to Iron Man mode, and then begin playing as Count Eudes of Anjou. He's a small count underneath another duke. Not to be confused with Duke Hugo of Anjou. We're looking for the Count, not for the Duke. This run is very simple and very consistent. You're going to go ahead and get yourself betrothed to anyone that has power. In my case, it was a random Irish Count. I don't even remember which one it was. And go ahead and put that betrothal through so that you can fight your uncle. Once you've got your alliance, go ahead and declare war on your uncle right away for your claim on the duchy. You and your ally together can easily defeat him. You could even do it by yourself if you're feeling a little bit risky, but you can be very consistent if you do it with an ally. Your ally might be unwilling to join the war, but that's totally fine. Just send him money until he's willing to join. If he's completely unwilling to join even after getting money, then just reset. Once you've won the war, it's time to be the Duke. The next step is to become the King. The rest of this run is basically just composed of waiting until you're an adult, and then clicking some buttons. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it. The only caveat I will say is that if Haston decides that he wants to do an invasion on you or something, the best way to deal with him is to just join the war on the side of the king, or queen in this case. And then once Haston is far away from his capital, go and occupy his capital, and it's instant win. You'll see me do it in this run here. I skipped through the waiting time for the siege, but you can see right here we're about to finish the siege, and then once we finish it, the war is over, even though Haston occupies a bunch of stuff, won all the battles, blah blah blah. Doesn't matter because we got his only county in the game, so we win. Go ahead and idle the game until you're an adult. You literally have nothing to do until then. And once you are an adult, you're going to do 2 things. You're going to go on a pilgrimage, and you're going to ask for a claim on the throne of West Francia from the Pope. Because the Queen of West Francia is a massive sinner, the Pope will always give you the claim, no matter what, even if you have sinful traits yourself. Once you've asked for your claim, it's now just as simple as create a faction and wait until everyone joins it, and then enforce the faction demands. And because the Queen is a different culture and is so much weaker than you, she'll certainly step down and hand you the throne. And at that point, you have the achievement. Always nice to get a freebie. Let's go look at the next one, boys. This next achievement is of a medium length, and it's pretty simple. It's called Last Count First King, and it requires us to start as Duke Nuno of Portugal, and in 1066 form the Kingdom of Portugal. This run actually would be a little bit harder if not for the speedrun tactics that we're going to be using, and the alliances that we are going to be exploiting the hell out of this run. The estimate for this run is about 10 to 12 minutes. For this achievement, we obviously are playing a historical character, so we can't make someone for ourselves, but we're going to go ahead and weaken one of our neighbors. So go ahead and custom create a ruler for the Aftisid Emirate, and we're going to make a female ruler that just has terrible stats. I know that my face here is blocking your view, so you can't see what I'm doing, but rest assured, I'm just making a terrible character. You don't have to worry about the details. Just go 0 in all stats, all terrible stats, and you'll be completely fine. Your first move as Nuno of Portugal is, of course, to get yourself a really powerful ally that will carry you in every war from here on, and also to go ahead and look at your vassals and just revoke everything that they have, except for the one that you're allied to in Coimbra. Along with that, spend your starting money on going on a long pilgrimage. We're going to need a ton of piety for the holy wars you're going to be pulling off, and we're also going to want to be asking the Pope for money here and there, so the pilgrimage will be very useful in the beginning of the game. Once you revoke the last of the land from your vassals that you can revoke from, we're going to start looking outwards in our kingdom here. In order to win our wars against the Muslims of South Spain, we're going to have to get some alliances with various European powers. Usually the easiest ones to get are Bohemia or England. Sometimes France too, but they can be unreliable because their ruler's a child. So I recommend Bohemia. They've always been the most consistent for me. Once you've got yourself a strong alliance that you can depend on, go ahead and declare war on the previously Aftisid Emirate, looking for the Duchy of Lisbon. This war can actually be a little bit tricky, especially if you have an ally like Bohemia is a bit far away, but just take your time, let Bohemia arrive in your land, and then attack the enemy with Bohemia ready to help you, and you'll be fine. After you've won the war, it's as simple as handing out this territory so you don't have to hold it for your own domain, and we're going to immediately go to war again for the Duchy of Algarve in the furthest south portion of Portugal. It's the exact same deal as with the previous war, where we're going to be using our Bohemian ally here to basically carry the war. And if you do it right, you can actually declare the war before Bohemia sends their troops home, and then Bohemia will keep their troops in Portugal ready to help you so you don't have to wait for them to come back around. It doesn't always work though, because it's going to depend on whether or not the Bohemians disband their troops immediately or like a little bit later, but if you're lucky they'll stick around and they can help you. Otherwise, this is our last offensive war outside of our own realm. We're going to have the entire Portuguese borders at the end of this war. If you notice that any of the Jimena brothers are attacking your ruler in Galicia, feel free to declare an independence war right away, just because we want to make sure that we get our independence before either Castile or Leon conquers Galicia. Otherwise, getting free will be a lot harder. Once you've won the war for Algarve down in the south of Portugal, you're pretty much home free. You should be able to defeat Galicia pretty easily even on your own, but you should still have your allies too. And once you defeat Galicia, you'll be independent, and then you can click the button to form Portugal. It just costs a bit of money, but you can always ask the Pope for money, and you'll almost certainly have the piety for it. And that's one more relatively easy and relatively short run done. Let's go look at the next one. This next run is kind of grueling. It's pretty long, but it's actually really easy. We're going to be doing Land of the Rus, and we're going to be doing Vladimir's Second Choice. Vladimir's Second Choice requires us to, as a North Germanic or Russian Asatru of any kind, convert to Islam and then convert all of Russia. Meanwhile, Land of the Rus requires us to start as Rurik the Troublemaker in 867 and lead our dynasty to rule the Empire of Russia. Obviously, these two achievements coincide pretty well, so we're doing them together. The estimate for this run is anywhere from about an hour and a half to 2 hours. I'm not going to say too much about character creation for this because it's the same thing we've been doing this whole time, which is we're going to take the Khazarian Kagan and we're going to turn him into a woman with a bunch of really bad traits and one that'll be disliked by the rulers, just because the Khazarians are kind of the only actual enemy that can really stop you if you're starting off as Holmgarther. Okay, so dropping in as Rurik, you're basically going to be at war for most of the game at this point, as we're going to try to rush to form Russia as soon as we can. It's going to be a bit grueling and it's going to be difficult to manage, but I'm going to give you some advice along the way to help you manage your vassals and your war opinion. Choosing your first wars is pretty indiscriminate. Just look for whoever's weakest and on your border and within the Empire of Russia and just start declaring the wars. One thing I will say is that in the northeast there are Finno-Ugric people who follow this Finnish culture with those special forest warden units. I'm not going to try to pronounce the Finnish word, I'm sorry. And they're really good in forests, but we actually have a special unit that counters them. If you get a bunch of Huskarls, not Varangian veterans, but Huskarls, you will absolutely destroy archers even in forest, because Huskarls counter archers and their heavy infantry, so they do a lot of damage. Go ahead and get a bunch of Huskarls as soon as you have a lot of money, which we'll get by going raiding over in Western Europe for a little while. Once you've assembled enough money from your raids and you've gotten a healthy number of Huskarls, go ahead and head south, just to, mob up anybody that you can. Here we see Polotsk is looking vulnerable, so I'm going to grab them. I'm not going to get into too many massive wars right away because I want to preserve my troops for sort of wiping out small people quickly, and therefore making myself the only one that can consolidate land in the Russia region. Don't worry about fighting larger opponents like Smolensk and others like that. Once you feel a little more confident, go ahead and head northeast. We want to get rid of these forest warden having enemies quickly because their units are really powerful, and we want to kill them while we have a really large advantage on them and while we have a good general. So go ahead and declare just a whole slew of wars on the Finno-Ugrics in the northeast, and you can even attack some of the smaller Russians like the Opoli and Vladimir and all those sorts of people. Once you've conquered the northeast, go ahead and focus on other Russians in the area and just sort of expand in all directions, checking that whatever you're conquering is within the Russian Empire border so that you can not waste your time conquering things you don't need. One thing I should say as well is that your decision to give land to Asatru or to Slovianskan vassals is sort of up to your playstyle. For me, I always give them to Asatru vassals because I don't like civil wars. But for some people, they're very comfortable fighting civil wars. So for this one, judge for yourself. Both of them are basically completely valid because we're going to be switching to Slovianskan temporarily later anyway. So do what fits you better. I chose to give my land to true vassals. You can see here as well that our decision to make the Khazarian Empire much weaker has been very good for us, because Khazaria has been split down the middle essentially, leaving the rest of Russia that we have to conquer much easier because they're fractured. Once you've conquered enough land to actually form Russia, this is the point at which I'd recommend becoming Slovianskin and Russian in culture. This is just because once you're the Russian Empire, you can actually vassalize several people that are in the Russian de jure borders, and you can only do that if you're their culture and their religion. So I highly recommend doing that. It also fits well because the heir of Rurik, he tends to be a diplomatic character, so he'll already have some diplomatic perks, and you can use those to try and get the true ruler perk, to make vassalizing even easier. From here, there actually isn't a whole lot more to say. I know it looks like we're very early in the run, but genuinely at this point, if you form the Empire of Russia, you're done. You're so powerful that no one can ever conquer you. You might have the occasional civil war, but you will have so much money that you can use that money to fight it off. And all you gotta do now is conquer the de jure borders of Russia, which is annoying because there are people who have little bits here and there, and it's gonna take a long time. And then you have to convert to Islam. In terms of conversion, I highly recommend the Karmatian form of Islam, simply because it's fundamentalist, and it has mendicant preachers, so you're going to be converting pretty fast as a Karmatian. Just like with Mother of Us All, we're going to want to make sure that our vassals are converting with us, so that we can get the most efficient conversions possible. So go ahead and just check that all your vassals will convert, give them money if you have to, sway them, whatever you need to do, and then once everyone will convert with you, go ahead and convert to Karmatian and begin converting Russia. Now that we're on just a waiting game, go ahead and sit around having your court chaplain be converting things. In terms of maintaining realm stability, the best I can say is go ahead and make some kingdom tier vassals that you can trust, and marry off your kids to various vassals who are strong. That way you can be allied, and they can never declare wars on you while they're allied to you, and you'll be okay. It's just a waiting game now. Won't be long before you finish converting the entirety of the empire, and then you will gain the achievement Vladimir's Second Choice. You should have already gotten Land of the Rus before when you made the Empire of Russia, so that's 2 more achievements off the list. It's time for the next one, boys. Let's hope it's not as long as this one. This next one is nice and quick, thank goodness. This is Royal Dignity, which requires you to, starting as Vladislav Przemyśl in 1066, lead your dynasty to rule Bohemia and the Holy Roman Empire. That sounds like a lot, but we're going to use some speedrun shenanigans to make that get done in just about 5 to 10 minutes. This one is actually very similar to Kings to the 7th generation, where we're going to be making a very trash liege that we can then replace with a faction demand. Funnily enough, in my run, the faction demand actually didn't work, but this run is so foolproof that you can just win the war when the faction demand fails. Just as usual, go ahead and make the Empress of the Holy Roman Empire a foreign culture, but keep her Catholic, give her all the sinful traits, and then put all of her stats to nothing, and you should hopefully get better luck than me, and she'll simply accept the faction demand. There are 3 things that we do during this run. First, you go on a pilgrimage. Make sure to take the most piety you can get, and ask the Pope for a claim on the Holy Roman Empire. Second, we form a faction. And third, we enforce the faction demands. Special bonus 4th step, if the faction fails, you go and win a war. And then you're done, basically. Once successfully taken the throne, be that peacefully or through war, now you just wait until you have 500 gold, asking the Pope for gold if he'll give you any. Once you have 500, create the Kingdom of Bohemia, and then you have the achievement. I really enjoy these short ones because they're very easy, but let's look at the next one. Let's see what that one is. Oh man, if you thought the last one was easy, this one is insanely easy. This achievement is Trapped in the Web, which requires us to have 3 direct vassals on whom we have strong hooks. This takes like literally 2 minutes. I'm not even going to bother putting up a part section here, we're just going to jump right into it. Go ahead and make a custom character as the Abbasid Caliph, and make an extremely intrigue-focused character of about 30 to 25-ish, that sort of range, years of age. And just jump right into the game. Here's the character that I made. Feel free to copy it if you do your own thing. As long as it's high intrigue, this really doesn't matter that much. Once you're in the game, go to your intrigue perk tree and go ahead and pick the left side. The only one that we need is the top one, but you can pick the other ones as well. And once you have that, set your spy master to be the highest intrigue person you have in your realm, and have him find secrets in your capital. Then we're just going to wait until we fabricate strong hooks on 3 random courtiers or guests, and then we'll grant those courtiers and guests land, doesn't matter what land it is, and there you go, you have 3 direct vassals on whom you have strong hooks. That's the end of the achievement. We're done. Let's go to the next one, boys. The next run is a long one, but it's an easy one. We're going to be doing Give a Dog a Bone, which requires you to start as Matilda di Canossa in 1066, and then form Italy, have 50 dynasty members, and form a holy order. This run takes anywhere from about half an hour to 45 minutes. We're going to be making a custom Holy Roman Emperor as we normally do, and it's going to be the same deal as previous runs where we're going to make a trash character. We want them to stay Catholic though so that we can claim their title. You can't see all the traits I picked for this character, but ultimately it doesn't really matter. As long as they're a bad character, you'll be able to get a claim on them. Give them maybe 1 or 2 sins, that way the Pope will hate them more, and you're good. In this run as Matilda, the big bottleneck for time is going to be getting 50 Dynasty members. You start off with like 3, so you're not very close by any means. But luckily, Matilda is a fine young lady and quite attractive, so she can go around sleeping with all sorts of men and get herself pregnant over and over again, hopefully creating as many bastards as possible. Even though this will negatively affect your piety, which we're going to need later for the creating of a Holy Order, it's worth it because ultimately the Holy Order is going to come very easily, but the 50 Dynasty members will not. You're also going to want to go on a pilgrimage, and you're going to want to get some piety so that you can claim the throne of the Holy Roman Empire using the Pope. Then we'll make a faction, and we should be able to absolutely destroy the HRE, given that a lot of vassals will support us. From here, I don't really want to bog you down with details too much. To be honest, this run is one of those ones that will always take a long time, no matter what you do. Basically, become the HRE, and then the only thing you have to make sure you do is create the Kingdom of Italy, and then just make sure you're holding that kingdom, or at least someone of your dynasty is. Other than that, it's just a waiting game now to have enough kids. The Holy Order will kind of come on its own, because you're going to be getting piety passively, and honestly, if there's ever a crusade and you can win it, if you win that crusade, you'll easily have enough piety to form one. So, you know, have fun, do what you want. The only thing you got to make sure is make sure all your kids are married, make sure you have the Kingdom of Italy, and make sure you don't, you know, end up getting game overed by some inheritance or whatever. You'll be okay. Other than that, I'm not going to go into too much detail, because it's kind of just a waste of your time if I lay out all the things I did in my run, because all the things I did in my run were not important to the success of my run. All you gotta do is get married, sleep around, and if you play as a male character, because you're probably not going to get the achievement before Matilda dies, go ahead and sleep around as much as you can with as many women as you can, and legitimize every bastard possible. Here's what my game looked like when I got the achievement. Yours might look vastly different. Let's go on to the next one. This next achievement is a tough one, but not too long. It's called Wily as the Fox, and it requires you to, starting as Robert the Fox, rule Sicily, hold a Greek kingdom, and convert it to Catholicism. This run takes anywhere from about 40 minutes to an hour. This run is grueling during a marathon speedrun, purely because there's a lot of RNG here, so I'm going to do my best to give you some mitigating strategies for RNG, but this run is one of the worst when it comes to RNG. We're going to start this run as we do many runs, where we're going to be making a custom character. Namely, we're going to be making a custom Byzantine Empress, because that is the only nation that is going to be a problem for us as Robert the Fox. Basically, the same protocol as always. We're going to make a trashy character, but one key difference here is we actually want this character to rule for longer. So try to give them a few diplomacy points, don't make them a rampant sinner, and give them some sons, so that when they die, they'll have kids that will pass on the realm and they'll be weak compared to the other vassals. Your first course of action as Robert the Fox, while you're still Catholic, is to marry off your kids for really good alliances in the Catholic world. I'm talking about like England, France, Holy Roman Empire, these sorts of alliances that are going to be really useful. And then we're going to be kind of switching religions quite a lot, actually. Before changing religions at all, we're going to be declaring some holy wars for the small counts in Sicily, just because they're easy targets. So go ahead and declare some holy wars for counties and holy wars for duchies as you see fit, and take the entire duchy of Sicily just to get it out of the way and to build up some power. Once you've conquered one province in Sicily, you're going to have access to one Muslim province, and this is good because it's going to hugely cheapen how much it costs to change religions. And we want to become Sunni so that we can invade the various smaller people in Sicily. Go ahead and conquer smaller people like Salerno and Napoli and Capua, and if you have the power for it, go and invade Benevento from the Pope, but you probably don't have that strength yet, so I would say, based on your own assessment, decide if you can take the Pope or not. If not, we'll come back for him. Once you've unified most of the Kingdom of Sicily, it's time to turn our eyes eastward towards the Byzantines. We're going to be declaring a holy war for the Kingdom of Hellas. This is because Hellas is the smallest Greek kingdom, so it'll take the least amount of time to convert to Catholicism. Now, fighting the Byzantines actually will not be very easy. They're quite strong in this start, because in 1066 they have a lot more land. But you can use your allies from before to help you out, which hopefully they will help you. Feel free to send gifts if they won't. But even then, if you have to reset because of this, it's okay. You're not losing too much time. On my PB run, I lost this run about 3 times before actually getting it, so it's totally normal. It's the same strategy though. You have to just hope the Byzantines kind of come over to your land and they'll take a landing penalty, and then you can fight them when they just landed, and then once they've been routed, you can travel over to Greece, try to siege things down. They are quite tough though, so good luck, and hopefully your allies will join you. Once you've won the war and you have all of Hellas, you actually have an interesting way to increase the speed of your run. Once you take the land, all of it's going to be Orthodox Christian, and you'll have it all in your personal domain. You should be Ash'ari at this point, so you're still a Muslim. We did not want to convert any of this land to Islam, obviously. But there's an interesting interaction. We're planning to convert back to Catholicism at this point. Once you become Catholic, any vassal who converts with you will have their capital changed to Catholic if the land in their capital was the same religion as them. So what we can do is we can grant every county to an Orthodox Greek and then convert to Catholicism, and assuming they come with us, then they will convert and also convert the provinces for free. Now, I didn't really pull this off in my run simply due to a lack of ability to get these Orthodox people to want to convert, but it's okay, you can always convert manually, and that's what I did in my run, so it totally works. Once the province converts, we're able to move on to the next run and you'll have the achievement. This run certainly is grueling, but you know, once you get it done, it is a nice burst of relief. Alright, what's next? The next achievement's a nice and easy one, pretty quick as well. It's called Emerald Isle. It requires us to start as an Irish ruler and hold the Kingdom of Ireland. It should take anywhere from about 5 to 10 minutes. Nice and easy. This one's simple enough that I'm also not going to bother with the whole sections of character creation. Basically, we're going to go into the character creator. We're going to make an Irish culture character, but a True Faith character in 1066 as Munster, since they have the most provinces in the area. And we're just going to go on a little conquest spree, conquer 8 provinces in Ireland in order to get the half that we need for Ireland. And then we'll go raiding for a few minutes to get the money that we need, and then we're done here. It's a very simple run. You're going to want to make a high martial and high stewardship character, although to be honest, it doesn't matter that much about the stewardship, just makes it more convenient for you. This is the character that I chose to play as. Feel free to copy it or make your own thing, up to you. Once you're in the game here, it's pretty simple. Just go ahead and declare war on Desmond, declare war on Ossory, Athlone, Leinster, everyone around you. They're all easy targets. I will say that your army right at the beginning is not quite as strong as it will be soon, purely because the game still factors in the stats of the unpre-made character. So you're going to have about 800 troops, but you'll have 1,500 once the game factors in your own character's marshal. Just keep that in mind. Once you've conquered the appropriate number of provinces for Ireland, stop conquering. We're now going to be focusing entirely on raiding. Unfortunately, you're not Norse, so you can't use your long ships to go raiding overseas, but it doesn't take too much effort to just walk around and go over to Wales and go up to Scotland and stuff. It'll be fine. It takes a few minutes, but once you get the money, you're done. You make the duchy, you make the kingdom, you'll need 750 gold total to finish the achievement, and you're good. That's it. Let's look on to the next achievement, boys. Alright, this one we're going to do real quick because it honestly takes, like, no time to do it all. It's called Carolingian Consolidation. It requires you to start as a Carling and be the only independent Carling to hold a landed title. It's going to take about 2.5 minutes to 4 minutes. For this run, I'm once again not going to bother with sections because it's so simple and fast, you don't have to bother. Basically, you're going to make a custom character in the same vein as Kings to the 7th Generation, where it's going to be a female of a foreign culture with a few sinful traits who is Catholic, and that way she'll easily give in to faction demands and the Pope will give us a claim. You're going to jump into the game as the one Carling left in 1066, Hubert, and you're going to go on a pilgrimage immediately, go into debt, it doesn't matter. Once you finish your pilgrimage, you'll have enough piety to ask for a claim from the Pope. Go and ask for that claim, he'll give it to you. Then you create a faction asking for the Kingdom of France, and then you can enforce that faction's demands, and now you will be an independent Carling who has, you know, all the land that you could ever want. You can also do this with an independence faction, but it doesn't matter. As long as you're independent, you're the only Carling that's landed, so you'll always get the achievement. Easy clap. Nice and easy. Next. Alright boys, this run is actually one of the longer ones. It's also one of the most significant ones, and it's our first triple achievement run. Isn't that wonderful? The first 2 achievements we're going for are going to be Blood Eagle and Miklagardariki. Achievements require us to, first, through Blood Eagle, start as any child of Ragnar Lothbrok and conquer all of the British Isles. Then, for Miklagardariki, we'll be starting and staying as a North Germanic Asatruan of any kind, completely control the Kingdom of Thessalonica, and hold any empire title without holding the Byzantine Empire. That's a mouthful. The third achievement we're going for is called Canute the Greater, and it requires us to, as an unreformed tribal, secure the High Kingdom of the North Sea decision. This run's pretty long, and it'll take anywhere from about 1.5 hours to about 2 hours, depending on your RNG. We'll be starting this run off by actually creating a custom character for the Kingdom of Wessex. This is because we don't want Alfred to take power, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually install a new family that we want to stay on the throne. How we do this is we create a female ruler that has a couple sons, and then we actually give her some okay diplomacy, maybe some okay intrigue, and then we give her no martial, no stewardship, so she can be very weak when we invade her. You can't see the character that I've made here, but don't worry. I would say less than 10 diplomacy, but more than 5. Less than 5 intrigue, but more than 3. So, 4-ish, that kind of thing. And then, like, 3 or 4 sons, and that'd be plenty. First up on the docket is going to be Blood Eagle. We're going to pop in as Ivar the Boneless here, since he is a tribal ruler, so we can use him for Canute the Greater. He is a son of Ragnar Lothbrok, so he works for Blood Eagle, and he can always do Miklagardariki. Your first moves are to win the 2 wars you start the game in, and then after that we're going to be focusing on declaring wars on pretty much everyone that we can, with an emphasis on trying to conquer the big boys first, then the small boys. Once you defeated Northumberland and East Anglia, we're going to focus on weakening Wessex and weakening Mercia. The way that we weaken Mercia is simple. We're just going to go ahead and take a chunk out of them by conquering their main duchy. But against Wessex, we're going to wait a little while before we declare any wars against them. We want to get them when they're a little bit weaker and we're a little bit stronger. The fastest way that we can gain a lot of strength for ourselves before doing that, though, is by declaring a subjugation on the Kingdom of Alba. This is because Alba encompasses several duchies, and we kind of just want to get rid of them. Since they're tribal, we can subjugate them as if they were our own religion. So that'll get us a huge swath of land, and it'll make us a kingdom tier character. Once you've defeated Alba, you can finally become the Scotland of your dreams before the Scots even have existed. And you can sit around and kind of just relax for a minute. Take a second to breathe, and then we'll go back to war. I definitely highly recommend taking out Strathclyde, only because of the border gore issue of not taking them out. Ultimately, you can take any enemies out in your own order, but I really don't like border gore, so I decided to attack Strathclyde right away. With Strathclyde out of the way and the border gore fixed, we're now going to focus our attention on getting Ireland before they can unify. Ireland will always be easy to defeat because even a completely unified Ireland is pretty weak, but while they're all single count opponents, we can take them out really easily. So go ahead and declare like 3 or 4 wars at a time. You can honestly handle it. One thing to keep your eye out for is the ruler of Gwynedd. He may choose to ally some of the Irish miners, and that can actually lead to a problem because Gwynedd's ruler, Rhodri the Great, is actually a really good commander. So just avoid him. Everything else, go ahead and conquer. Once you've conquered most, if not all, of Ireland, you may see that Jorvik has conquered a piece. That's actually okay because we intend to vassalize Jorvik later, so don't worry about them conquering anything from you. Go ahead and keep conquering Ireland if you don't have any truces. Don't break truces yet, but eventually we may break some. For now, though, you may be worrying about Ivar's succession. In terms of succession, the best thing to do is to disinherit the kids that you don't want to have. So Ivar already has a couple kids. Look through them and see which one's best. Disinherit the ones that aren't very good and just have one heir. That way it keeps it simple, and if you really need to, if you cannot get enough renown in order to disinherit children, then go ahead and go with the nuclear option, imprison plus execute. Plus L plus ratio. Now that you've unified Scotland and Ireland and you've got quite a bit of strength under you, go ahead and spend some time raiding, get some money, and then let's get ready to invade Wessex. We're going to use the Invasion of Kingdom CB just because Wessex has a lot of land in England across many different duchies, and we're also going to call in Jorvik as our ally. Together, Ivar and Halfdan can definitely take down Wessex. So you guys got this, and you should have lots of money to support the war, and it'll be a great way to take a massive chunk of land out of England. After that, we'll focus on Mercia and Wales. With Wessex taken care of, England is basically now yours. There's no one to stop you. I'm just going to let you figure out how you want to conquer the rest of England and Wales because it's all very easy. Your last obstacle could be Rhodri the Great up in Gwynedd, but honestly he's quite susceptible to assassination, and also you can just defeat him using sheer numbers, so you'll be okay. Important to note here as well that if you want to vassalize Jorvik, you're going to have to form the Kingdom of England, which is easy enough, but just keep it in mind. It's going to cost a lot of money. Once you've vassalized Jorvik, the rest of Blood Eagle is pretty simple. One thing you got to watch out for is succession, but if you take care of Ivar's kids and make sure to disinherit and execute the ones you don't want, then you should be fine when it comes to succession. Either way, I'm going to let you go ahead and conquer the rest of the British Isles. Once Ivar dies, you'll be playing as your heir, and hopefully your heir is young. You want them to be no older than 40. If they're older than 40, you're unlikely to be able to hold all the kingdoms you're going to need for Canute the Greater for 30 years. But, you know, if they're in that sort of 20 to 40 range, you probably could do the achievement with the current character. The best way to get started on Canute the Greater is simply to begin invading Norway. Hopefully, there won't be too much resistance over in Scandinavia, and what we're also hoping for is that Denmark has properly unified so that we can just subjugate them in an easy war rather than having to pick them apart in various wars. In this particular run, Denmark was quite strongly unified, which was completely fine with me because now we can subjugate them and take all of that land that we need in one fell swoop. Also, bonus lesson here, you might have noticed that Denmark was allied to Sweden, and I also was allied to Sweden. In this game, the way that alliances work is whoever calls first gets the ally. So as you can see here, I declare the war and then I immediately call Sweden in, and by doing this, Sweden will join me and not Denmark, despite being allied to both of us and I'm being the aggressor. Once you beat Denmark, the rest of Scandinavia will fall in very quickly because they're the only one that can be sent up against you. So go ahead and conquer everything of Norway that we're going to need for the decision. You can check what you need by looking at the decision and checking the North Sea Heartlands region. It's basically all of the west coast of Norway and then the western half of Denmark. Be sure to make haste when conquering Norway and Denmark, purely because the longer you spend not holding the kingdoms, the longer your character has to live, and the more you run the risk of not living long enough to take the decision. Remember that to secure the kingdom of the North Sea Empire, you have to rule all three kingdoms of England, Norway, and Denmark for 30 years straight as one character. It's difficult. I changed kingdoms as well to England just because I like the color better, but you don't have to. At this point, you should have all the land that you need to make the High Kingdom of the North Sea Empire, and that's going to be your last goal before we move on to the next achievement. Alright, so while you're waiting those 30 years for your North Sea Empire to form, go ahead and declare war on the Byzantine Empire for the Kingdom of Thessalonica. We might as well since you have the opportunity, right? In the case of my run here, I actually lost my character and ended up needing to wait another 30 years, which is unfortunate. It's bad luck, but hopefully it doesn't happen to you. And regardless, you can still make it work even if your character passes away. Just means you have to wait a little bit longer. Okay, so after enough waiting, you're now ready to click the button, so just go ahead and that'll get you Canute the Greater immediately, and then because you also have Thessaloniki from the previous war, you're also going to be getting the Miklagardariki achievement at the same time. Congratulations. Let's move on to the next one. Next up, we've got ourselves another double achievement. We're going to be looking at Sibling Rivalry and Reconquista for this run. Sibling Rivalry requires us to start as any of the Yemena siblings in 1066 and then become Emperor of Spain, while Reconquista requires us to start as any Iberian Christian and convert all of Iberia to Christianity. The estimate for this run is about 40 minutes to an hour, depending on your RNG. When it comes to character creation for this run, we're not actually making a character for ourselves, but we'll be replacing one of the local emirs. This is going to be your pretty standard terrible character creator where we're just going to lower all the stats to nothing. No need to worry about children or about lastingness or about foreignness or religion, just make a terrible character. You can choose any of the emirs to do this for. I chose the Dunanid Emirate, but you can pick any one that you think would be a better pick. To me, the Dunanids are a large target that owns a lot of land, so I picked them. Up to you though. We're going to be jumping in as Sancho Yemena of Castile, since he's the most militaristically powerful, and we're going to be accomplishing this run using military power. In terms of opening moves, we're going to be assassinating the oldest brother, Alfonso, over here, and we're also going to be trying to go on a pilgrimage as soon as we can, because we're going to need a lot of piety for all the holy wars that will be going on. In terms of getting married, don't worry about genetics or anything. This run is kind of long, but generational levels of length are not the case here. We're going to be getting a good alliance. I highly recommend the Kingdom of France, purely because they're always going to be there to support you. The HRE tends to be busy doing other things, and whenever they get inheritances, they're going to have different dynasties ruling, so it's hard to keep a long-lasting alliance. And the English can be really inconsistent because sometimes the English will get conquered by William the Conqueror, they find themselves in wars. Basically, France is going to be your best pick. Once your assassination plot against your brother succeeds, you'll inherit all of his land, and that's perfect because we're just going to handle that land out and we're going to go work on the other brother. While you're waiting to assassinate your last brother, let's go ahead and invade Navarra and Aragon, since they're easily conquerable. While you're at war, you're going to probably have the murder of your brother finally happen, and you'll inherit the last Spanish kingdom, which leaves us wondering, do we unify the Spanish thrones? This is one that I think is up to your playstyle. I chose not to for a while because I find that absolute crown authority makes your vassals a little too rebellious, but eventually I did choose to, once I felt comfortable dealing with all my vassals and their power. Now that you've taken away the warring kingdoms from your other brothers, you have unified all of northern Spain, and we can go ahead and make some advances south. For my first target, I chose to go with the Portuguese coast, purely because they're pretty weak, but we'll be coming back for the rest of the Muslims later. After I took out Lisbon, I decided to go for Toledo, purely because it's a nice swath of land, so I can get a pretty nice power boost from it, and also because the Mahfuzid, which was the custom character that I had made before, was kind of expanding a little bit, and I wanted to sort of stop them in their tracks before they got too big. Once you've conquered the Duchy of Toledo, you're pretty much going to be the unstoppable monster that you should be at this point. The Muslims down south probably won't pose much trouble anymore, but you might see that they have alliances with like larger empires in North Africa, like the Idrisids or the Sultanate of Africa. Those can be a problem, but even then, you probably can beat them at this point. From here on, the only worry you might have is just succession, because you do have a lot of kingdoms, and this is actually where the Unify the Spanish Thrones can be very useful, because when you click Unify the Spanish Thrones, every kingdom tier title that you have in the Hispanic Empire section is going to turn into one kingdom. So in this case, if I click the button right now, every kingdom will become Castile, instead of being Leon, Galicia, Castile, Badajoz, Navarra, all those. So that was a good opportunity to click it if you're worried about your succession. Important note, by the way, make sure that you're converting provinces to Catholicism the whole way that you're going, purely because we are going for Reconquista as well as Sibling Rivalry, so you want to make sure that you're converting along the way to save yourself some time down the line. At this point, just go ahead and conquer everything that's not Christian in the whole Hispanic Empire region, and you'll have no problems with this because everyone's going to be so weak. Special emphasis on the County of Cordoba, by the way. It has a special building that's going to give you a lot of extra taxes. I highly recommend keeping Cordoba for your own domain. Don't give it away. Give something else away and hold on to Cordoba for yourself. I actually made a decision at this point as well to go ahead and form Portugal. Not for any particular reason, mostly just because, like, for the memes, but feel free to do it as well. In a way, it's better because when you form Portuguese culture, you actually gain more innovations. So technically it is the optimal move, but it's really unnecessary. You should find yourself having the appropriate amount of land required to form Hispania, and you can ask the Pope for the 1,000 gold that you need to actually buy the title. Once you do this, you will be the owner of the Sibling Rivalry achievement. I've gone ahead and skipped to the point at which you will have all of the provinces in Iberia, purely because there's nothing really I can tell you to help you conquer Iberia. You're going to be so strong you won't need the help. But now let's look at conversions, because there's actually some better options for conversions than Catholicism, namely Paulicianism. I know it's a bit of a strange choice to convert when we're trying to convert Iberia to Christianity, but remember that Christianity includes all of the faiths within that religion, so you don't have to be Catholic. Therefore, Paulician is better because it's fundamentalist, and therefore can convert much faster than Catholicism can. Once you've conquered everything and you've been doing your conversions, there's not really much more to say. Just spend your time converting. As you can see here, you don't have to actually convert the Catholic land because Catholics are Christians. You just have to convert all of the Muslims away to Paulician. So here you see, I have managed to get the achievement, converting just to Lisbon there to Paulician, and now we're done and we have the achievement. It's wonderful. Next. The next achievement is basically the reverse of Reconquista. It's called Al-Andalus, and it requires us to start as an Iberian Muslim and control all of Iberia, and to take the Avenge the Battle of Tours decision. This one's actually easier than Reconquista, both because the start we're having in 867, we already have the Umayyads who rule a very large portion of Iberia, and we don't have to convert anything to Islam. So it's a lot easier. Thank goodness. The estimate for this run is anywhere from about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. This is one of the rare opportunities where we actually are going to be using a custom character to play as, not just as a way to weaken someone else. So go ahead and make a custom character for the Umayyad Sultanate, and we're going to make a very militaristic focused character. And there's a very important note here I'm going to put right at the beginning, okay? The achievement says Iberian Muslim. This does not mean starting in Iberia, it means having an Iberian culture. That includes all of the Iberian subgroup and the Andalusian culture in the Arabic subgroup. You cannot be Bedouin, you cannot be Berber, you have to be Andalusian or specifically one of the Spanish Iberians. Besides that, go ahead and make the military commander of your dreams. I recommend being a little bit on the older side so you can have more perks to start the game, and you should be pretty much the dominant military force of the entire region, purely because you have all the land and because you have a very powerful military leader. Being the eminent power of Iberia, you're pretty much unstoppable. I would provide more actual commentary about what to do, but basically just attack Asturias, attack Navarra, attack the Baleares Islands, because apparently you don't rule over them for some reason, and just rotate the truces. The only thing I will say is that when you attack West Francia, go ahead and use your Invasion of Kingdom or your Holy War for Kingdom against them for Aquitaine, because luckily for us, the Battle of Tours decision requires you to conquer exact and 867 borders of Aquitaine. So once you feel ready to take on West Francia, go ahead and do that. You can also wait until Charles the Bald dies, and then his son, Louis the Stammerer, will rule over Aquitaine, and that's fine. But it's kind of up to you. If you want to wait, you can, but sometimes he doesn't die, sometimes he takes his time dying, maybe you want to be faster, so up to you. But for real, this is not very difficult at all. Just conquer everything, and once you're at the end of it, feel free to truce break. So you'll see in my run here that with Asturias, I chose to start truce breaking once I had everything else that I needed. Really because I don't need the prestige, I don't need the general opinion. The last bit of advice that I can give you when it comes to this run is managing your realm is actually pretty easy. What you should do is have some alliances with some of the North Africans to keep you safe in case of rebellion, but just go ahead and marry your children off to all of the vassals you have that are actually a problem. Because we're playing in such a short-term level, we're playing with just one character, having really big allied vassals won't be a problem, since normally in regular runs, it can kind of make them too powerful because they're untouchable towards you as well. But in this case, who the hell cares? Let them be as strong as they want. If they're allied to you, they cannot fight you. You're grabbing a few of the remaining French provinces, if there are any. Go ahead and take the decision to avenge the Battle of Tours, and if you haven't already, conquer the rest of Iberia, and you're done. That's the end of the achievement. Let's look at the next one. The next run has to do with two achievements, namely Volva and A Dangerous Business. Volva requires you to start and stay as a North Germanic Asatru of any kind, and to take the Found Witch Coven decision. Meanwhile, Dangerous Business requires you to, as a dwarf, win a varying adventure anywhere outside of Europe. I put it in stars because in reality, the achievement actually triggers no matter where the varying adventure is, it doesn't have to be outside of Europe. The estimate for this run is anywhere from 5 minutes to 8 minutes. This is one of those rare achievements where actually the character creation is going to need a whole section, if only because it is kind of complex. We're going to be dropping in as the Jarl of Kunegarder, and we're going to be changing the character to a witch dwarf with high learning and high martial. The most important things that you're doing during this character creation are the high learning, then the high martial, and then that you have 4 children. It can be daughters or sons. I went with 4 sons in this case. We need the learning because we need to be able to convince our children to become witches, and we need the martial so that we can easily go on raids to get enough prestige to go on a varying adventure. The other required traits are, of course, dwarf and witch, so we're going to be needing those for the very basis of the achievements. There's a little bit of RNG in this run, in that the sons and daughters that you create will be randomly generated, and based on their traits, it will be easier or harder to ask them to become witches. With that, character creation is done, and now the run is very simple and just dependent on a tiny amount of RNG. Once you get into the game, go ahead and start trying to convince your firstborn son to become a witch as soon as you can. If the chance is kind of low, feel free to restart if you're feeling not like taking the roll of the dice here, but if you're feeling comfortable, then go for it. Next, we need to get a lot of prestige so that we can hit the Distinguished level of fame, which is the minimum requirement in order to go on a varying adventure. The best way to do this is to go on a few raids of your neighbors, and then to use that money that you get to host feasts and call hunts. It won't take very long at all to get the amount of prestige that you need. Once you've got the appropriate amount of prestige, I always go for Estonia because they're pretty much always weak and they're very easy to get to. So I go with them, and I highly recommend them as a target as well. But you can pick whoever you want really, as long as you win. After that, continue to ask your children to become witches, and once you get at least 3 of them, then you're done. You can hit the button and you will have both achievements. Congratulations. Let's take a look at the next one. The next achievement is called Saga in Stone, and it requires you to, as any one dynasty, commission 100 runestones. This achievement normally is a huge pain in the ass, but we're going to actually trivialize it here, but it's still going to take about 15 to 20 minutes to pull off just because of the nature of how we're doing it. We're going to be creating a custom character, one that we're actually using, for the Byzantine Empire. Go ahead and create a Norse Orthodox character, and give him a ton of stewardship. This is going to sound kind of weird, but stewardship's actually going to be the most important stat by far for this run. Like, I'm talking a lot of stewardship. Finally, give him 1 son. Just 1, and it has to be a son. Since my webcam was obscuring the character creation screen, I decided to go in and take this quick screenshot of what an ideal character would look like. Basically, as you can see, all stewardship, 1 son, and then the greedy trait for a little more income. Now that you've made your character, we'll get right into the game, and we're going to go ahead and pick our focus. Go with the wealth focus so that you can get more money, and we're going to actually be using passive money generation to generate 5,000 gold, because that's how much we're going to need to raise 100 runestones in one lifetime. First thing we're going to do is surrender this war to the Seljuks. We have no interest in Armenia whatsoever, so just let them have it. Then we're going to get married, but not because we actually want kids. We're going to get married purely because we want to get more money out of the marriage event. So go ahead and pick someone who will give you high prestige, because the higher prestige, the more money you'll get. At the same time, go on a pilgrimage in as far away holy site as you can, because we're going to want some piety so we can declare some duchy holy wars. Our first target for war is going to be the Fatimids and Jerusalem, purely because Jerusalem has some high development provinces that give good tax due to their special buildings. So we want to hold those for ourselves. And because we're such high stewardship character and we took the middle path of perks from the stewardship tree, we're going to have a lot of domain limit that we can use to really extract cash quickly. Once you've got Jerusalem, though, we're not going to be resting on our laurels. We have some more wars to declare, of course. That war being another war against the Fatimids again, breaking the truce, for Alexandria this time. We're actually doing this for 2 reasons. One is because we want to get overthrown by a faction in our land, but because of how this game is programmed, you cannot actually have any AI factions form against you for the first 10 years of the game. So in the first 10 years, we're completely safe on the Byzantine throne. But if we get our general opinion to be extremely low, and because we're of a foreign culture, the Greek vassals should hopefully overthrow us. But before that, we want to get lots and lots of land for our personal domain that we can use for our money-making scheme here. As you can see, we're going to do one last truce break here against the Fatimids, and that's for Cairo, and then we'll be done our truce breaking ways. Once you're done the war, go ahead and enforce your demands, and now we're going to sit and just kind of make some money for a while. We're just going to sit around and collect taxes. At one point, you're going to be overthrown from Byzantine Empire, and this is exactly what we want. So whenever they put their demands forward, just say yes. The next step might seem a little bit perplexing, but basically we're going to be granting away all of our land except for 2 counties. One will be your capital, and one is going to be one that we're going to give away to people. Move your capital to somewhere like Giza, like a very low development province. You want to have as little income as possible now. We're going to swap from maximum income to no income. This is because the price of a runestone is based on your income. It ranges anywhere from 50 gold to 200. Since right now our runestones are going to cost 200, we won't have enough gold to get 100 of them. But if we reduce our income so much so to the point that the price drops to 50, then we can easily raise 100 runestones using our 5,000 gold. So this is where the exploit part of the run kind of comes in. It's not per se an exploit since it's not really breaking the game, but it's a little bit of a strange interaction. So whenever you build a runestone, you can choose one of 3 reasons to build it, and in this case we're going to be using the Ascending a New Throne reason. Now you can only use that reason, I think it's every 20-ish years, it's some limited amount of time, but here's the interesting thing. If your character ever becomes landless, then that timer is reset. So what we're going to do is, we have 2 counties. We're going to grant 1 to our son. This will increase his rank from landless to count. Then, we're going to try to imprison a vassal and intentionally fail so that we get deposed. Thus, we're going to be playing as our son, and we ourselves are going to become landless. Once we're in as our son, we're going to have 2 counties, because we inherited one from our father, all of our father's gold, and we're going to be freshly gaining a rank from Count to Duke, because we had Thrace before. Therefore, you can raise a runestone. It should cost 50 gold as well. Then we're going to do it again, but with our father. So grant your father a province, and then intentionally get abdicated by a vassal faction, and then repeat the process. Just watch here. All you gotta do now is repeat this until you put up 100 runestones, and you'll be done the achievement. Congratulations. Let's look at the next one. The next run is called Far From Home, and it requires you to, as a Norse Asatru ruler, have your capital on any island in the Indian Ocean. The estimate for this run is anywhere from about 3 to 5 minutes. We're starting this run as Haston, and we're going to not spend too much time on it so as to be quick. You're going to be moving towards Sardinia like we usually do as Haston. Go ahead and conquer Cagliari. Then you're going to bring the adventure over to Egypt. We want just anywhere in Egypt as long as it gives us access to the rest of Arabia. I recommend the Duchy of Cairo. Then we're going to adventure down south to the west coast of Arabia. Any of the smaller independent tribes in that region work fine. Then you should have the diplomatic range to bring the adventure to Socotra. Once you win that war against Socotra, you will have the achievement as your capital is in an Indian Ocean island. Congratulations. Let's look at the next one. This next achievement is extremely easy. It's called 7 Holy Cities, and it requires you to, as a Hindu ruler, hold all the Hindu holy sites at once. It sounds kind of tough, but we're going to be using a custom character to do this almost instantly. The estimate for this run is anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. Character creation here is not overly specific, but the basic requirements are have a diplomacy education so you can get enough perks, be about 50 years old so you can have enough perks, and then take 1 or 2 holy traits in Hinduism. So I took temperate and generous, and that's about it. You can pump your diplomacy stat if you want. Basically, the requirements are the age, the education, and those holy traits. Once you're in the game, you're going to be picking your perks. Go ahead and go down the middle path of the diplomacy tree so we can get true ruler so that we can vassalize everyone around us. From there, we're going to work our way south towards the Chola Duchy. This is because they happen to have the last holy site that we need. Go ahead and vassalize everyone that's in the way. Right when you start the game, there will be a pretty heavy negative modifier against you for vassalizing due to military strength, but just wait about a month and then that modifier will go away. The ones that are your religion, they'll probably take low taxation. But the ones that aren't your religion, they'll have to take religious exemption, but that's fine because we don't really care about our vassals, we just want to get the holy site and then be done. Once you vassalize the Cholas in the south, you will have finished the achievement. Let's move on to the next one. Next run is also a very quick one. It's actually going to be our second to last run for this entire guide. This one is called The First of the Crusader King. It requires you to, as a Christian North Germanic, participate in the very first crusade from the start of the game. The estimate for this run is about 2 to 3 minutes. Definitely not going to waste too much time on this run. The basic setup is we're going to be playing as a North Germanic Christian in 1066 and just waiting. One thing that we do to accelerate the Crusades a little bit is we're going to make France a custom character who's going to be of the Muslim faith. This will make the Pope think that Western Christendom is under attack. He therefore will declare Crusades earlier. Regardless of if you do this or not though, he's going to be declaring them pretty soon because the Fatimids have Jerusalem. So basically, I'm going to drop in as the King of Denmark, and I'm just going to sit around and wait until the crusade happens. And then I have the achievement, and that's the end of the run. Congratulations. Let's move on to our very last run of the game. Okay guys, well, we're finally coming to the end of this, and it's been quite the journey. But this run is definitely the hardest, longest, and most grueling of any of the runs, and this is the run for primarily the end of an era. Now, this is not the only achievement we're going to be getting in this run, obviously, we have a lot more to do, but this run centers around essentially completing a game of CK3. Now, this run is going to depend really heavily on the performance of your computer, because generally speaking, with Speed 5, the game runs as fast as it possibly can based on your computer's performance. So for me, this run took like 11 hours. But for some of you, it might only take 8, or it might take 7. But regardless, we have a lot to do along the way. So I'm going to be splitting this run up into several sections where we look at specific achievements, and then I'm going to go over at the very end some of the miscellaneous ones that you can sort of get by just playing the game. Let's get started. The first part of this run is going to be composed of Norman Yoke, which requires you to, as William, in 1066, to win the invasion, become English, and have only English vassals. This run takes about 10 to 15 minutes, and it's not too difficult. Let's jump right in. As with many other runs in the past sections of this guide, we're going to be changing not our own character, but we're going to be changing our enemy. Go over to the Kingdom of England and switch over Harold Godwinson to some sort of incompetent female ruler, just so that he can have very little support from his vassals, and that will make the invasion much easier to pull off in the beginning of the game. You're basically aiming for 0 stats and everything, but we don't want to go too bad in terms of the opinion, because you actually want this queen to stay ruling. So keep her Anglo-Saxon, keep her Catholic, and then you should be fine. Jumping in as William the Conqueror, you're lucky enough to be blessed with having an amazing general and a pretty good swath of troops, but you actually are not invincible in this war. It is very easy to get completely destroyed by the English army here and the Norwegian army. So we're going to have to play our cards a little bit close to our chest here and play a little bit cautiously. When you have all your troops assembled over in the northern coast of Normandy, go ahead and give a second, wait for the English troops to head north to go fight the Norwegians who have landed in York. We're going to sort of sneakily land in Kent, and then we're going to do a couple sieges around the capital, and we're going to hope to win this war without actually taking any battles at all. Optimally, Norway will win first, but that doesn't always happen, as in this run it did not. If you waited an adequate amount of time, you'll see that the English troops are all busy up in the northern parts of England, and you have pretty much free reign to go and siege down the capital. Go ahead and do this, and if you see the English troops approaching, just back off, because ultimately we don't actually want to fight. We want to let the Norwegians whittle down the English. Another thing to note as well is that you can also use allies to help you if you're scared. In this case, I decided to hedge my bets and get myself in alliance with Bohemia. Ultimately, this was unnecessary, but was still nice to have anyway, and I recommend it if you're feeling a little bit unconfident as well. Me being this many hours deep into the run, I was of course wanting to hedge my bets more than anything else. So I highly recommend allies if you're uncertain of your ability to win the war by yourself. Once you defeated the Saxons, you're going to have 2 major issues on your hands. One of them is a lot of land that you definitely cannot hold for yourself, and the other one is a bunch of angry Norwegians sieging down the north part of your land, probably with an allied Sweden or an allied Denmark as well. We're going to be handling the title handouts first, just because it's easier to do to start off with. And the thing is that you kind of can do whatever you want here. There's only one requirement, and that is that everyone that you give titles to that's in England needs to be Norman. That's all I can say that actually matters. The rest is up to you. In my way of doing things, I gave out titles according to basically 1 Norman, 1 county, but you can do it your own way, whatever suits you. I did it that way because I like it that way, but ultimately, for the purpose of just this achievement, it's not going to matter as long as they're all Normans. With the land handed out, let's go focus in on the war now. You can go ahead and call any allies that you might have made for the purpose of the invasion into this war so they can help you. And I want to definitely make it clear that for this war, we are not going for an enforced demand, we are just going for a white peace. As with any war in this game where you're outnumbered, try to take advantage of the AI's hubris in that they're going to be splitting up their armies trying to do sieges across the entirety of North England. Hunt down those small little stacks in the corners, like for example this Swedish army here, the Norwegian army there, whatever, and just sort of pick off the little bits until you're ready to take on the whole army. If you have a lot of allies, you can also just wait for them to land, and you can do one big battle up in the north. It's up to you and your playstyle. Once you've got enough war score to either enforce demands or go for a white peace, go ahead and do that. In my case, I was lucky enough to capture an heir, so I was able to go for enforced demands, which is some nice free money, and it gets rid of the claims in the future, but a white piece will more than suffice for this achievement. There are 2 tasks we have to take care of before we move on towards getting rid of all of the Anglo-Saxons in our realm and supplanting them with Normans. And that is that we need to move our capital to London, or any place in England, but London's the best pick, and then give away whatever land you have back in Normandy to a Norman or to anyone of your choice, really. Once you've done that, we're going to go ahead and just be a massive tyrant, and we're going to be revoking the Duchy of Mercia away from the Duke of Mercia, or the Duchy of Northumbria away from the Duke of Northumberland, depending on which one you think will say yes. If they both are going to say no, then just pick whichever one you dislike the beard of the most, I guess. This is going to be the only big civil war that you need in order to complete the achievement, and I'd highly recommend getting allies for this one. Even if you didn't use them for the invasion, you didn't use them for Norway, now they're going to be a big help because these vassals actually could kick your ass, funnily enough. So go ahead and bring in some allies. You may even see that some of your Norman vassals that you just appointed in England are going to rise up against you too. That's unfortunate, but you know, you can better check their traits if you want. In a speedrun, I don't have time to look at all the traits, so if I had picked more shy, more content, more craven characters, they might not have risen up. It's okay though, because you can beat them all using your allies. Once you've won this civil war, you'll have all of the enemies of your state locked up in prison, and that's perfect for us because we're going to be revoking everything that any Anglo-Saxon holds. And any Norman lords was up against you, it's your decision if you want to release them or if you want to revoke their titles, then redistribute them to new Normans. As long as Normans hold all the duchy level titles, you're fine. Put the emphasis on duchy titles purely because in the achievement it says only have English vassals, but you gotta understand that that means English direct vassals. So there can be Anglo-Saxon counts as long as they are stuck beneath a Norman duke. You'll see what I mean as I demonstrate on the screen here. Once you've handed out all of the duchy tier level titles to the Normans, and you've gotten every Anglo-Saxon either unlanded or as a sub-vassal underneath a Norman lord, go ahead and click Embrace English Culture and you'll be done with this run. Congratulations. At this point in the run, we're actually not seeking any particular achievement, we're looking to set up this whole run so that we can get more achievements later. So basically we're going to be doing some kingdom building, and we're going to be playing tall, because playing tall in this game is by far the most effective. Firstly, just go ahead and declare a war on Scotland and grab yourself the little piece of land they have in your kingdom, just because you might as well complete our de jure borders. But beyond that, we're not going to be declaring too many wars right away, not until we change religion. Basically the rest of William the Conqueror's life, however long he lives, is going to be spent on making sure that you're building upgrades in all of your holdings, and ensuring that your children don't squabble over your kingdom. One of the best ways, well worst rather, for this run to die is to have it fall apart to family squabbles. We're going to try to keep a unified household, try to have one heir, and as always, disinherit first. If that doesn't work, then go for imprison plus execute, the old nuclear option. One thing that's very important to do as well is make sure that all of your daughters get married into various prestigious families and kingdoms matrilineally, and that all of your sons get married into families patrilineally. This is because we don't actually want to give away any of our family, we only want to welcome new family into our ranks. That way we can keep ourselves pretty clear of any succession crises, and we can also be sure to get ourselves lots of claims in other kingdoms. Later on, we're going to be using intrigue to try and force our way into other thrones, as well as straight up war, and this is because we have a couple achievements to get through that are going to require us to have a lot of thrones. When it comes to William the Conqueror, do the marriages, build up your buildings, build up your domain, ensure your kingdom is stable, get that one heir succession, and once he dies, we can take our next steps. In my case, in fact, I actually failed to have only one heir, but I'm going to show you how to remedy that if it does happen. In this case, the character I'm playing as here has no children of his own, he only has siblings, so I'm going to go and get myself into a civil war and then lose intentionally and be deposed. Now I'm playing as my brother, who I'd prefer to play as, and all of the land that I lost to him is now back into the kingdom. It's a perfect deal. One of your great opportunities to expand your power as a dynasty in this game, especially as a Catholic, is through crusades. The Pope here has offered us one, and we're definitely going to take it because we're going to put one of our brothers, maybe even the one that we just got deposed as, to go be a king off in some random state in the middle of the Middle East. Now the nice thing about these crusades is that even if you lose them, you don't actually lose anything, but if you win, you get a whole lot. So they're really safe and they're really good investments. Now what about the issue of trying to get enough crusade participation? This is an interesting one because this is kind of a weird mechanic in that your participation is measured by the number of troops you committed to battle and the sieges you've gotten. The weird thing is that troops committed to battle does not mean winning battles, it just means being in them. So as you're going to see here, I'm just going to throw away all of my men to this random group of troops, and I'm going to be in the first place for the Crusade participation for basically the whole war now. And I'll let the entire rest of the Christian world win the war, while my martyrs are remembered and rewarded. It's a great system. Thank you, Mr. Pope. Assuming that the Pope called on enough Christians to win the war for you, you should now win the war, and thanks to the sacrifice of tens of thousands of Englishmen, you will now successfully have procured a new kingdom for your dynasty. In this case, I actually gave it to the character who I was playing as before, my brother, Robert Curthose, who I falsely decided to get deposed, only to give him some new kingdom in the far-off land, you know. It was like a trade deal. We worked it out in the back end. Now that he exists, he probably won't get dethroned, because we're going to ally him, and that way he can call us into his wars, we can call him into ours, and we're going to have a nice, long relationship with him. Eventually, he'll make a cadet branch, and that's going to be fine. It'll actually have some interesting implications later on in the run that we'll talk about once we get there. But it's really fun, actually. This is probably the most fun run of the game, despite it being the longest one. In this one, you're kind of free to do whatever the hell you want. And that's the emphasis I want to make here, is that you're building up your dynasty, and you do that however the heck you want. Because you have the entire game. It doesn't matter how fast you do any of these steps. We have to go to 1453, so you're pretty much free to be in a sandbox. In terms of next steps, we're going to be doing the same thing we did with William the Conqueror at this point. We're going to be investing in our buildings, continuing to get marriages, all that sort of thing. Just work on getting yourself on multiple thrones and making sure that your domain is very powerful. Like I said in the beginning of this run, playing tall is amazing. In terms of finding marriages, go ahead and just check on some of the major powers in your area, like say France, Castile, Brittany, Aquitaine, whatever you feel like. And just check if they have any princesses or princes available that are of young age. See if you have any matching suitors, and get them married appropriately. Remember, matrilineal daughters, patrilineal sons. This way the claims will always be in your favor and never against you. I've gone ahead and skipped ahead quite a few generations and just over 100-ish years into the future, just to demonstrate to you kind of how sandboxy this part of the game is. At this point, things might look a little bit weird to you, but I want to make it clear that we're having a very good run here. Most of these kingdoms that you can see on the screen are actually our family, so Castile, Aquitaine, England, of course, Jerusalem is still our dynasty over there, and we're basically spreading ourselves around as much as we can. You see here we took Croatia. We're aiming for 10 kingdoms so that eventually we can have 10 kingdoms of our own family so we can get Nepotism. And we're also getting ready to invade both the Byzantines and the Holy Roman Empire, because eventually we also have to make the Roman Empire in this run. You'll see when we get there though. We're going to be specifically looking at how to get Nepotism at this point. Nepotism requires you to have your dynasty rule 10 independent realms of at least kingdom tiers simultaneously. I'm not going to put up an estimate here because the estimate could wildly vary between different runs, so I'm just not going to bother. There are two ways to go about getting 10 independent realms with your dynasty on them. One of them is by conquering 10 kingdoms and then granting them all away to people around you that are of your family. The other one is to have relatives that have claims and then push their claims to other realms. They're both completely valid. One is kind of a little more direct, one's a little more indirect though. They both involve war though either way. In order to get your family on another kingdom's throne, it will usually involve a marriage or a conquest, depending on what you're trying to do. In this case, I'm going to go with the marriage route because it's what I've been talking about the whole time. Let's use France as an example because they're one of the earliest examples of me putting my family on another throne that I did in this run. Let's say you have a daughter who is matrimonially married to a fifth-born son in France. The AI will generally agree to a matrilineal marriage with its own son if the kid is more than 3 inheritances away from the kingdom. This is because they trust that they're not going to get a succession crisis because of it. Now we have a situation where you have a daughter who is married to a son in a kingdom, and that daughter is married matrilineally to that son, so any kids that they have will be of your family. The way that claim inheritance works is that all children receive claims on all titles of their parents whenever the parents die. So if the King of France dies, then his sons, all of them, will inherit claims to all of his titles, including the Kingdom of France and any other kingdoms he might have. This particular son, who is married matrilineally to our daughter, is one of them. We're actually not going to be pushing his claim though. He's going to inherit the claim, it's going to be a pressed claim. Once that son dies, all of his children will inherit an unpressed claim of all pressed claims that he had. So in this case, this means that the children that he has with our daughter are going to have unpressed claims to all these kingdoms. This is perfect for us. It is this child you see on the screen now. a child of our dynasty with an unpressed claim to a foreign kingdom that we will use to conquer a new kingdom. If you understood all that, then go ahead and into the comments and type in, "I got you, bro." The other way is a lot more straightforward. Conquest. You find a kingdom. If it's a different religion, you holy war it. If it's the same religion, you fabricate claims until you have all the claims you need. You conquer it. You spend the money required to create the kingdom. And then, either through a partition succession or by just granting it away manually, you give the kingdom to the kid that you want to have it. And it's done. Simple as that. Repeat this process until there are 10 independent kingdom tier or empire tier rulers of your dynasty, and you will have the achievement, What Nepotism. For the next achievement, we have Rise from the Ashes. This requires us to restore the Roman Empire. Quite simple. Again, I'm not going to be providing a estimate, purely because it'll be very heavily dependent on where you are in your run as to how long this will take, so no estimate. This is actually going to be pretty simple, and it basically involves having a learning character who has the trade's sanctioned loopholes. This way you can actually just buy a claim to the Byzantine Empire using your piety, and then you can invade the Byzantine Empire, conquer it for yourself, and then go ahead and just invade all the places you need. The list isn't too long, and it shouldn't take too much time off your hands. Once you've got the Empire, you can also use this as an opportunity to increase your family's splendor, and also as an opportunity just to sort of increase your strength in general. You're going to be making a lot of tax money from the Byzantine subjects, and you're also going to have a pretty massive little empire going, so go ahead and use that to your advantage before we finish this achievement. One opponent to be very careful of actually is the Pope himself. By this point in the game, if you've waited until the 13th century, he's going to be really, really strong, and also, more importantly, really, really rich. So he's going to have a lot of money, which means mercenaries are going to come out of nowhere, and he genuinely can defeat you with all the mercenaries he can potentially hire. So be careful with the Pope. He's probably your only real obstacle. One thing you'll probably end up dealing with a lot if you're the Byzantine Empire as a foreigner like this, and even of a different religion in my case, a custom religion, is you're going to have a lot of civil wars. Now, one thing I'll tell you is if there's a civil war to take the empire away from you, it's actually not worth the effort to fight for it. Go ahead and just surrender. But before you do, go ahead and make all of the kingdom titles in the empire. This is because when you lose the empire title to your vassal civil war, you'll still hold all the kingdoms, making you a vassal of the Byzantines, while being a mega king of basically every region of the empire. By doing this, you can go ahead and reclaim your title almost instantly, and you'll basically be in a cycle of civil wars between taking you off the throne and then putting you back on the throne over and over again, ad nauseum. In this way, you actually maintain your power perfectly and never have to worry about losing the throne in any permanent sense. Although the border gore is truly horrific and honestly a true disgusting show, you will be able to form the Roman Empire eventually, be composed of something of the Roman province of Britain, little pieces of France, and maybe some bits of Spain, but as long as you have what you need to form it, you will have considered yourself a reformer of the Roman Empire, and you can take the achievement, you can move on to the next one. Perhaps the most memeable achievement in the entire game, we now have a perfect circle. It requires you to have only 2 distinct parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. I will of course provide a diagram to explain what exactly this means. So how do you pull this off? I'm basically going to take you through the process using a diagram here, so let's pull that up. First, there's you, and preferably we want you to be a woman who is married to an unrelated husband. It can be anybody that you want. Have this husband until you eventually give birth to a son. Once you've had your first son, you're going to go ahead and divorce your old husband and now marry your son. You can only do this if you're part of a certain religion with certain rights, so go ahead and make a custom religion that allows you to get unrestricted marriage if you haven't already. You'll be staying married to your son until you give birth to another son. And the important reason why we play as a woman for this achievement, by the way, is because you will be the one who decides the true lineage of your children. This achievement actually does not check for what it shows you in the UI, it checks for the actual genetics of the character. So if you're playing as a man and you have a wife, it can actually be a problem that your wife may cheat on you. But if you're playing as the woman, you can refuse all attempts at seduction and therefore ensure that all kids are truly yours and your husband's. It's time to divorce and remarry to our grandson, who is actually our son. And at this point, we're pretty close to the achievement actually. For the last step, we're going to have 2 children with our grandson/son, looking for a son and a daughter. Once you've had your new son/daughter/great-grandson/great-granddaughter, wait for those kids to grow up and then marry them to each other. At this point, the kid that those 2 have will be the perfect circle child, and you can just get yourself to play as that character by continuously deposing yourself. Once you depose yourself for the last time and you're now playing as your infant, inbred, scum of the earth child, you will get the achievement. Congratulations. Assuming you did this using your character as being the mom, like I suggested, you shouldn't have any issues with cuckoldry, since you will have been in control of who was sleeping with you. But if you did choose to do it as a man and you don't get the achievement at this point, the basic assumption is that at some point your wife cheated on you and this kid that you're currently playing as is actually not properly part of your lineage. At this point, the last achievements are things like Beacon of Progress, Monumental, A Legacy to Last the Ages, these sorts of things that basically you're going to be getting just by playing the game. Even a name known throughout the world, if you've been playing in the style that I've shown you in earlier sections, you will easily have this achievement. So what else can I say? I mean, the rest of them are so simple or so obvious that I wouldn't say I can give you any notes. At this point, sit and wait to get End of an Era, and you should be all done. In the end, I actually made a mistake during my run, and my very last achievement was First of the Crusader Kings, which we talked about before. But for you, it should be at End of an Era, and then you'll be done your game. I don't really have anything else to say, except that if you made it this far, I really appreciate it. I hope you consider liking and subscribing, as all YouTubers always ask for. And feel free to check out my Twitch on twitch.tv/tarkasarkasarkasar, as found in the description, so that you can watch this kind of stuff live. I've actually been doing some blindfolded CK3 speedruns lately. Maybe you'll be interested in those. Regardless, hope this guide helped you, and if it did, then continue to play CK3. I'll see you guys for more content in the coming weeks, as well as for the Royal Court hype. Can't wait for the DLC, guys. Thanks for watching. Peace. Oh, we got it! GG! 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 GG, boys. That's it. 66 out of 66 in 22 hours and 5 minutes. We did it. There you go. And nobody canceled the run either. GG. If you were here, say you were here.